The bell echoes over the Acasis Royal Academy. This grand complex has stood here since its founding, producing generations of brilliant scholars. It is hailed as the cradle of the continent's elite. The academy only admits adult students, who can be seen moving through the cloisters, clutching their books. However, its true fame and notoriety stems from its exorbitant tuition fees and its exhausting graduation exams. By comparison, the entrance exams are practically child's play, even in this sea of knowledge. At this pinnacle of education, Tilia sits quietly in the library. Papers drift on the wind from the windows of the towering academic buildings. There are always days when unexpected events, entirely unrelated to academics, still find a way to happen. A purple butterfly lands among green leaves before fluttering lightly across the stone floor, coming to rest between two pairs of shoes facing each other. Sunlight pierces through the lush foliage as the butterfly wings shimmer in the light and shadow. I like you. A young girl stands before Alex, her head slightly bowed, hands clasped tightly in front of her. I know you don't usually accept these things, senior, but just in case. Tilia hides around the corner of a stone wall, her fingertips tightly gripping a thick manuscript as she holds her breath. The girl's voice continues from behind the wall. You don't need to answer now. Please don't feel pressured. Tilia suddenly lifts her head and looks toward the source of the voice. With trembling hands, the girl holds out a wax-sealed letter. I put my dormitory key inside. It's for you. Tilia leans against the wall, half crouching as she peeks at the two of them nearby. Even if you don't accept my confession, please at least take that. What on earth is going on? To see such fiery devotion in a school filled with noble brats. Tilia watches the girl who handed over the letter and falls into thought. Tilia lowers her gaze and lets out a soft sigh. Her again. A hand takes the envelope from the girl, fingertips brushing against the rough paper. Alex stands in the shade of the trees, holding the letter with a look of slight bewilderment. Alex Davenport. He is the heir to the prominent Duke of Davenport and the Academy's notorious playboy. However, he is also the top-tier honor student who hasn't dropped from first place since enrollment. The grades posted on the bulletin board. First place, Alex Davenport. Second place, Tilia Ambrose. Now he is standing right next to me. With graduation approaching, Davenport is in first place yet again. I really want to know if there's anything the guy can't do. But being too perfect is also a curse. People are constantly flocking to him. A red-haired girl, standing among her companions, sighs helplessly. We aren't engaged yet, so it would be strange for me to try and control him, Tilia. Tilia stops and turns her head to look at the figure at the other end of the corridor. Oh dear, Cecilia, don't feel too much pressure. Davenport will snap out of it after graduation. The voices of the girls drift from behind Tilia. My mother always says that men eventually crawl back to their families. Tilia sets off, her leather shoes clicking sharply on the stone tiles. Will he really snap out of it? Looking at him now, he's not just promiscuous, he's a top-tier playboy. Why does everyone lose their minds over a guy like that? Then I will wait for you forever, senior. The girl who confessed is flushed red, bowing her head deeply, not daring to look forward. Then she suddenly turns and runs away, covering her face, leaving Alex standing there alone. He holds the letter in his hand. Hey, Alex. Alex turns his head and looks coldly at the companions approaching him. How many times has this happened this week? Another key? Several boys gather around, laughing and slapping Alex on the shoulder. If you keep this up, you won't leave a single girl for us. Alex silently stares at the key in his hand, a hint of boredom in his eyes. A group of boys huddles by the lawn, craning their necks to look into the distance while jeering. Oh, what now? Is it his turn today? Tilia sits in the shadow of the stone steps, resting her cheek on one hand, her fingertips unconsciously stroking a leaf. I'm really jealous. He looks so calm about it. Tilia stuffs her books in her bag and zips it up. Men, those noble sons who exhausted all their luck on the entrance exam and have been repeating grades ever since. They gather in groups by the benches, laughing and playing, having to take classes with such people and even collaborate with them. That is the true tragedy of the senior year. That said, unlike Alex Davenport, who was born with a silver spoon but flirts everywhere, Tilia lowers her head, her long hair sliding over her shoulders and obscuring her expression. I have no desire to be worshipped by those fools. It's so enviable. You don't even have to lift a finger and girls chase after you. A boy leans back on a bench, hands behind his head, his face full of resentment. Meanwhile, I have to spend money just to please them. Maybe I should try pursuing her. Who? Another boy asks, turning his head with a frivolous smile. Who else but Tilia Ambrose? A twisted smile hangs on Gregory's face. Her family is nothing special. No status, no money. I'm telling you, she's the type you can toy with without having to take responsibility. Tilia stops, her back to the bench, her fingertips gripping the bag, strapped tightly. Hey, you're speaking too loudly. Gregory spreads his hands and leans back, his tone full of disdain. Just you watch. Give me a week, and I'll be able to. Alex suddenly clenches his fist, his knuckles cracking from the force. Hello, Gregory Miles. Tilia turns around, standing in the dappled shade of the trees. She looks down at him from above. Tilia Ambrose. Gregory freezes in place, cold sweat sliding down his temples. He stands up abruptly, waving his arms incoherently. Hi, Tilia, the weather. The weather is really nice. Gregory scratches the back of his head, forcing a fawning, dry laugh, though his eyes dart around uneasily. Perfect timing. I actually have something I wanted to say to you, too. Tilia stands under the sun-drenched tree, tilting her head slightly. A gentle curve forms on her lips, but there is no warmth in her eyes. Even if I were dead, I wouldn't sleep with you. Ha! Gregory freezes, his legs trembling slightly. Tilia stands before him. Do I need to repeat myself? Even if I had to sleep with every other man in this world, I would never choose you. Alex lowers his head, shadows veiling his face as he lets out a soft chuckle. Tilia turns to look at Alex, and Alex watches her. Caught in the act, Alex tilts his head back slightly, letting the dappled sunlight fall on his face, a playful smile on his lips. Tilia, clutching her bag, looks down at Alex with a gaze full of disdain and disgust. I'd rather rummage through a trash can than sleep with a toilet. Tilia lowers her eyes. I'd rather rummage through a trash can because I never sleep with toilets. Gregory, face full of shock and horror, asks, what? What'd you call a toilet, Tilia? Without looking back, she walks away. Gregory roars in anger behind her. Tilia Ambrose. Make yourself clear. He stands there shouting, hey, stop right there. Alex raises a hand to cover his mouth, looking somewhat bewildered. I don't think I'm the only one in the academy qualified to take first place. Tilia walks on, her leather shoes clicking against the ground. But to be stuck in second place for 4 consecutive years, pushed down by someone like that. A hint of melancholy shows in Tilia's eyes as she gazes into the distance. Everything, all the effort I've put in. Tilia stands alone in the shade of the academy trees, watching the groups of classmates in the distance. Their laughter and chatter seem to have nothing to do with her. Judy runs over from afar, waving her arms and shouting, Tilia, Tilia. Tilia stops, her shoulders trembling slightly, looking surprised. Judy runs up, panting, hands on her hips. Where are you? Judy clutches her books tightly, a bright smile on her face. I even went to the library to look for you. Tilia lowers her eyes and explains softly the library was too noisy, so I was studying outside alone. If I hadn't come to this academy, my life would probably be even more of a mess. Tilia walks along the academy path. Now, I should focus on preparing for the graduation exam, because it's the only thing I can do right now. Tilia walks forward with her bag, Judy following close by. The two of them walk side by side through the lush shadows of the trees. The next day, Judy stands by the terrace looking down, letting out a gasp of surprise. Oh, it's Alex Davenport. Judy leans against the railing, watching the training ground below. Practical combat isn't even a mandatory subject, yet he's still so diligent. Tilia stands to the side, lowering her eyes in thought. He could have been a knight. Why did he come to the Royal Academy? On the training ground, sword shadows clash as Alex engages in a fierce duel with an opponent. The sound of metal hitting metal rings out continuously. Who knows? Judy says, watching the figure below and speculating. If he joined the Knights, he might not be able to date so freely. Alex grips his longsword, his eyes calm and sharp. Although he seems to be playing around, his fundamentals are very solid. His sword swings are efficient, with no wasted movement, precisely blocking his opponent's attacks. Judy suddenly leans forward, letting out an incredulous cry. What? He actually blocked it like that? Tilia watches Alex on the field, as expected of the youngest son of a long-standing knight family. The excited screams of other female students reach her ears. It's Senior Davenport. Several girls huddle together, whispering with shy blushes on their faces. What should I do? Should I wait until the end of next year to try talking to him? Senior Cecilia is right over there. So what? One girl retorts dismissively. They aren't engaged yet. I just want to have some fun. Besides, I heard Senior Davenport never rejects women who approach him. The world really is unfair, isn't it? Judy turns her head to look at Tilia. Tilia lets out a soft sigh. You can say that again. Cheers erupt from the training ground. No matter how much of a frivolous playboy he seems to be at decisive moments, he naturally stands above everyone else. Alex holds twin swords, lightly evading attacks with ease. It's so effortless, as if he's being forced to shoulder something he never wanted. Alex stands before the podium, looking down at the speech in his hand, his expression somewhat cold. Thunderous applause rings out around him. Now, we invite the top freshman to the stage to deliver the representative address. Tilia stands in the crowd, watching the figure on stage. Alex grips the speech tightly, his fingertips whitening slightly from the pressure. Tilia stands at the edge of the terrace, watching the training ground below. I hope he loses. No matter how unfair the world is, at least in a match, someone else should be able to win. Alex's attention is drawn to Tilia. From the stands, the girls scream, "Senior, look out!" The opponent raises a wooden sword and swings it down hard with momentum. Alex turns his head, his eyes instantly becoming cold and sharp, exuding a murderous aura. The wooden sword traces an arc through the air, followed by a dull thud of impact. The opponent loses their balance entirely, falling back clumsily and hitting the ground hard. Alex stands firmly, holding his long sword at an angle, looking exceptionally cool in the sunlight. A burst of enthusiastic cheering erupts. The opponent lies on the ground, panting heavily, their face full of resentment and defeat. Judy claps excitedly, jumping up and down on the terrace. Wow, that was amazing. Did you see that? Tilia turns her face and calmly watches her friend. Were you just cheering for Davenport? Of course not. Judy gives a thumbs up. I've been praying for you. I hope you can beat Davenport and take first place. Tilia gives a faint smile. All right, thanks, Judy. Sunlight bathes the academy's magnificent buildings. The noise from the training ground gradually becomes distant and blurred. Alex sits alone on a bench, sweat sliding down his cheek. He pants slightly, a hint of exhaustion in his eyes. A slender arm offers a handkerchief. Cecilia speaks softly beside him. Here, good work. Your performance just now was outstanding. Cecilia watches him with a smile. Alex takes the handkerchief and asks in a low voice, "Why did you come all the way here?" Cecilia turns to look at the distant scenery. Same as you. I just wanted to get some fresh air and clear my head. Alex stands up and adjusts his sweat-dampened shirt. Cecilia tilts her head slightly, her gaze falling on the shade of a tree not far away. Is that? Tilia is standing by the flowers, lightly tucking her long hair behind her ear, a gentle smile on her face. Judy is beside her, gesturing excitedly. Alex follows Cecilia's gaze and watches that figure. Tilia Ambrose. Cecilia stands there, looking somewhat thoughtful. Gregory's hurried footsteps echo through the empty corridor. He catches up to Tilia, panting, "Can you spare a moment to talk?" Tilia stops, her expression cold as she turns her head. Judy sticks close behind her, staring warily at the newcomer. "What is it, Gregory Miles? What are you planning with Tilia?" Tilia lightly pats Judy's shoulder to calm her. "It's fine, Judy. Can you go to the lecture hall and wait for me first?" Judy looks back hesitantly, her eyes full of worry. Tilia gives a reassuring smile and pushes her back to signal her to leave. "It's okay, go on." Tilia stands alone in the corridor, her long hair falling over her shoulders, her eyes carrying a sense of detachment. Gregory fumbles with his hands, fine beads of sweat forming on his forehead. "About before, those things I said in the lecture hall. I'm afraid there's been a slight misunderstanding." Gregory explains flusteredly, "I didn't know that day." "How much did I hear?" Tilia tilts her face slightly, watching him with an icy gaze. "Let me think. Was it when you called me an easy woman? Or when you said I was the kind of girl where there wouldn't be any consequences even if I were raped?" Gregory's face instantly turns pale. "What? What kind of girl would say something like that?" "No, it's not like that." He waves his hands frantically, cold sweat breaking out on his forehead. "Is that all you heard?" Tilia looks down and adjusts her bag, her expression nonchalant. "Now that I think about it, I seem to have seen and heard something else." She raises a hand, lightly touching her lower lip, a hint of mockery in her gaze. "Weren't you about to lick your tongue raw, just to lick Alex Davenport's boots?" Gregory freezes in place as passing students cast strange looks his way. The whispers seem to turn into blades, piercing his pride. He lowers his head, shadows covering his face, his eyes bloodshot with extreme rage. "Enough," Gregory growls through gritted teeth. "Know your place, Miss Ambrose." He snaps his head up, his eyes full of violence. and contempt. You're nothing but the daughter of a poor baron, a lowly creature who has to look for work everywhere just to earn a few miserable copper coins. I am the formal heir to an earldom. All students are equal. How long do you think the school rules can protect you? Tilia's voice remains as calm as water. What, are you planning to hit me? She tilts her head back slightly, looking directly into those eyes full of fury. Come on, try it. Tilia's gaze is cold and steady, meeting his threat without fear. It will only result in you being expelled faster than you can graduate. Gregory grinds his teeth, a low, angry growl escaping his throat, veins bulging slightly on his forehead as he glares at the girl. Tilia stands her ground with her arms crossed, her expression cold. Disdain shows in her eyes. Apologize, or you can admit that you're a dog no different from a trash can. Gregory shakes with rage, pointing at Tilia and roaring. A burst of laughter erupts nearby, followed by the sound of crisp footsteps. The sound approaches from afar, echoing through the corridor. Stop it, Gregory. Gregory turns his head sharply, his face showing a look of shock. Why are you so eager to harass a lady? Cecilia reaches out to hold Tilia, her sharp gaze fixed on Gregory. Tilia's eyes widen slightly as she watches her sudden savior. Subtle whispers fill the corridor. Cecilia looks forward. What's happening? Tilia Ambrose is arguing with Gregory Miles. The watching students lower their voices to gossip. He deserves it. I hope that bastard Gregory gets a lesson this time. But Tilia is going a bit overboard too. Who cares if her grades are good or not? The reputation she leaves at the academy will follow her for life. There's no benefit in showing off like this. Cecilia turns her face gracefully, her eyes deep. Indeed, if she could just be submissive for a while, life would be much easier. But she insists on making things so difficult for herself. Poor Tilia. Should I help her this time? Cecilia sets off, her red leather shoes clicking crisply on the floor. Stop, Gregory. Why must you torment a lady like this? Tilia looks to the side in surprise. Cecilia watches everything unfolding. Tilia turns her face, a faint smile playing on her lips, her fingertips lightly touching her chin. Alex stands where the light and shadow meet, looking somewhat confused. Impossible. Alex Davenport's ideal type could never be someone like her. Cecilia reaches out and grabs Tilia's wrist, stopping her movement. Tilia shows a look of surprise, a hint of cold sweat appearing on her brow. Cecilia. Gregory freezes in place, eyes wide and jaw clenched as cold sweat slides down his face. Cecilia Clayton. She is the eldest daughter of the noble Clayton family, already betrothed to Alex. Most importantly, the great Clayton family has a long-standing connection with the Dan Miles family. Gregory hunches his shoulders and holds his trembling hands to his chest, making incoherent sounds. Tilia watches him coldly. You're truly a disgrace to the Earl. Get lost, Gregory Miles. The onlookers scatter. Tilia stands her ground as Gregory shakes his fist in the distance, shouting, You just wait, Tilia Ambrose. Cecilia turns to watch the silent girl. Are you all right, Tilia? You must have been terrified. Try to understand what just happened. You know how foolish boys can be. Tilia lowers her head, adjusting the bag strap on her shoulder. I don't really care, so you don't need to worry about me. Tilia, you're so calm. I'm almost jealous. Cecilia leans in close to her face, showing a gentle smile. I'm not very good at dealing with this sort of thing. Tilia turns her face away, a hint of distance in her eyes. Speaking of which, Tilia, Cecilia asks softly, have you considered looking for a job in the future? Tilia asks why. The female secretary at the Marquis's office just got married, so there's an opening now. Cecilia strokes her hair, her smile bright. With your personality, I think you would make an excellent secretary. If you're willing, I can have my father write a recommendation letter for you. What do you think? You're both smart and sharp. I think secretarial work suits you better than being a tutor. Cecilia's eyes sparkle with expectation. Thank you very much, Cecilia. Tilia nods slightly. If my grades drop, I will consider your proposal. Well then, have a nice day. Tilia walks away alone. A heavy book is slammed onto a desk with a dull thud. That guy Gregory Miles is a complete jerk, isn't he? He actually said such trashy things to you. Judy slams the table in anger. If I had known this would happen, I never would have gone back to the classroom first. It's fine. It's nothing serious. Tilia sits in her seat, looking down and flipping through a book. But next time you must tell me, so I can go and argue with him, and give him a good scolding while I'm at it. Judy waves her arms indignantly. Tilia turns her head to watch her fuming friend. You actually know how to scold people? Of course, that bastard. Judy's eyes widen, and just as she is about to swear loudly, Tilia suddenly reaches out and covers her mouth, looking somewhat alarmed. That's a relief. Where did you learn such foul language? Tilia, let's go. Helpless. Judy answers vaguely, my brothers taught me. Anyway, trust me, a guy like that is nothing. Judy shakes her fist. Tilia lowers her eyes and sighs. Oh, right, do you want this? My dad just bought it. Judy rumbles through her bag. What is it? This is what everyone's been drinking lately. Holy water filled with sacred power. Judy pulls a delicate small glass bottle from her bag and holds it high. If you drink it, you'll feel refreshed. Your focus and memory will improve significantly. Judy shakes the transparent liquid in the bottle, her eyes full of expectation. That's what my brother said. Holy water was originally supplied to the knights fighting magical beasts, but now money is the new power. Even the temple has turned into a group of merchants. I even specifically learned what to watch out for when drinking this. Judy points excitedly at the bottle. Tilia turns her head and waves her hand slightly. No thanks, you drink it. If you're always giving the good stuff to me, won't your parents be angry? Judy stops, looking surprised. What are you saying? My dad even asked if you needed anything else. Judy watches her friend seriously. He said if it weren't for you, I would have failed my exams long ago. So of course I should do this much for you. Judy picks up a book from the table. Oh, is this book part of the exam material too? Tilia responds, that. I was planning to read it for a bit and then return it, but I forgot. Tilia takes the book and holds it to her chest. I'm going to the library to study for a while. You can go to sleep first. Tilia walks toward the door. Judy shakes her fist behind her. See, you worked too hard. I'll wait up for you, so come back soon. Judy calls out. Tilia waves her hand with her back turned. All right, I know. Her leather shoes click lightly on the wooden floor. Tilia walks alone through the dim corridor. I am sorry, Judy. Tilia lowers her eyes, looking a bit melancholy. You must have something that belongs to you, Tilia. Something that belongs only to you, that no one can tarnish. Her mother, gently holding the young Tilia, had whispered this while sitting in a chair surrounded by flowers. Tilia walks by the window in the moonlight, clutching her bag, her long hair fluttering behind her. This is the last year. If I can get good results in the graduation exam, a result that everyone has no choice but to recognize. Tilia walks through the empty, silent hall, carrying her heavy books. She looks up at the faint light streaming from the high windows. Then, I can finally be free. In the empty library, only one desk lamp gives off a dim yellow light. Tilia sits alone at the long table, buried in her writing. The pen nib scrapes against the paper with a scratching sound. The last student stands up to leave, the chair dragging across the floor with a harsh grating noise. Tilia stops writing and looks up at the large clock on the wall. It's later than I thought. Judy must still be waiting for me. Tilia packs her bag and walks quickly out of the library doors. As she passes through the silent corridor, Tilia suddenly stops, her pupils shrinking in alarm. Tilia catches her breath, her face full of shock. Alex lowers his eyes, watching the girl in his arms. Careful, he reminds her softly. Alex steadily holds Tilia's shoulders, bringing her to his side. Tilia's body goes stiff, her hands pressed hurriedly against her chest as she looks up at the face so close to hers. Alex Davenport. Tilia is trapped between his arm and the wall, looking up in shock at the man before her. Alex Davenport. Alex lowers his eyes, gazing at the girl inches away. He falls into silence. He asks unhurriedly, "Aren't you leaving?" Tilia suddenly turns and runs out the door, disappearing at the end of the corridor. Her leather shoes make a dull thumping sound on the floor. He scare me. Tilia moves away without looking back. Is he pretending not to know about what happened last time? That's actually more convenient for me. Tilia walks with her head down. Now is not the time. I should go back to the room and review. Just a little more. I need to get at least 4 hours of sleep. Alex walks behind her with steady steps, maintaining a consistent distance. Tilia closes her eyes as the sound of footsteps echoes in her ears. Tilia quickens her pace. It feels like she's been walking with Davenport for a long time. Is it just my imagination? She turns her face slightly, glancing back out of the corner of her eye. Alex follows silently with an expressionless face. The two of them walk one after the other on the stone path, their shadows stretching long. Cold sweat breaks out on Tilia's brow. I don't know what he's thinking, but it's so annoying. She bows her head, avoiding the gaze from behind. Alex watches her back, a faint, barely perceptible smile playing on his lips. Tilia suddenly stops and turns around, staring at the man behind her. What? Her brow furrows, a hint of irritability in her tone. Why do you keep, Alex? Cecilia runs over quickly, her skirt swaying. Are you here to pick me up? Alex turns his head to look at the girl running toward them. Tilia stands to the side, looking somewhat awkward. Cecilia stops in front of them, her tone light. What wind blew you here? Why did you come all the way here? Is the sun going to rise from the west tomorrow? She notices Tilia nearby and looks surprised. Oh, Tilia is here too. Are you two heading back now? Tilia lowered her eyes and responded softly, yes. And you? Cecilia smiled and pointed behind her. I just finished studying in the student council room. Tilia gave a slight smile and replied quietly, I see. Cecilia looked around, her gaze shifting between the two. But what are you two doing here? Tilia turned around and began walking away. I'll be going then. You two enjoy your studying. Tilia walked alone through the empty campus, her long hair swaying gently in the breeze. She shook her head and let out a sigh of relief. Cecilia watched Tilia's departing back and let out an exclamation. My goodness. Alex stood there in silence, his profile hidden in the shadows, his expression appearing somewhat cold. Cecilia withdrew her gaze, a faint blush rising to her face and a smile playing at the corners of her mouth. She leaned closer to Alex and softly called his name. Alex, since the second-ranked student said so, why don't we do some extra studying ourselves? Cecilia reached out to grab the man's lapel, her fingertips lightly brushing the fabric. The student council room happens to be empty. Alex appeared somewhat preoccupied. He stared at the girl in front of him. Besides, there's plenty of holy water left. If you're tired, just let me know at any time. Cecilia tilted her face up, a flirtatious smile on her lips. Cecilia Clayton. Alex murmured her name in a low voice. Cecilia's eyes widened slightly as she gazed into the man's eyes. If you want to seduce someone, put a little more effort into it. Don't use cheap tricks like holy water. Alex stood up straight, looking down at her from his height. What? Cecilia stood frozen, her expression one of bewilderment. Did you think I wouldn't know the side effects of abusing holy water? As a marquis's daughter, you should carry yourself with more dignity. Alex coldly dropped those words and turned to walk away. He lowered his eyes, his icy gaze sweeping over the girl. He reached out to brush away Cecilia's hand from his lapel, his tone flat but indisputable. Also, to prevent any misunderstanding, let me clarify something first. I never intended to wait for you from the beginning, and I didn't take this path specifically for your sake. The leaves rustled in the wind. He set off, walking forward without looking back. This sort of thing won't happen again. Not now, and never in the future. Cecilia stood rooted to the spot, watching the man's departing back. Misunderstanding. Alex walked down the steps with steady strides, his hands in his pockets. We're going to be engaged after graduation anyway. Until then, could you try to ignore me? How much longer do you think your family will let you stay on your own? Cecilia turned her head, a trace of coldness in her eyes, as she watched the direction the man had gone. Leather shoes clicked softly on the wooden floor. Tilia pushed open the door. She quietly entered the room. Judy was fast asleep, slumped over the desk with her cheek pressed against a book. Tilia reached out and carefully draped a jacket over her. Judy let out a mumble in her sleep. She suddenly jolted awake, looking around in a panic. Who's there? Why are you in my room? Tilia quickly pressed down on her shoulders, soothing her softly. It's me, Judy. Have you been waiting long? Go to sleep for now. I'll wake you up tomorrow morning, and we can continue then. Judy gave a wide yawn and rubbed her eyes. Tilia, did you study well today? Did anything happen? Like, with Gregory or something? Judy asked softly, her eyes half closed. Tilia lowered her eyes, Alex's figure flickering through her mind. Nothing happened, Tilia responded softly, masking the turmoil in her heart. So sleep peacefully. You need a good rest before the exam. Tilia sat by the bed and tucked Judy in. You're right. Judy crawled into the covers and let out a satisfied sigh. Good night, Tilia. Tilia watched her friend's sleeping face with a gentle smile. Good night, she murmured softly. She turned her gaze to the window, where the full moon hung high in the night sky. The cold moonlight spilled into the room, and the entire academy fell into a deep silence. Alex walked alone along the stone path, the streetlights casting a dim yellow glow. His leather shoes tapped rhythmically against the ground. He stopped and tilted his head back to gaze at the night sky. Tilia's image surfaced in his mind. He turned his head, his expression appearing somewhat melancholic. Alex narrowed his eyes slightly, and the corners of his mouth curved into a meaningful smile. The full moon hung high, its cold light enveloping the entire academy. Alex stood in the empty courtyard with his hands on his hips, looking up at the moon. Once this exam season is over, he turned his head, his gaze deep. Vacation will begin. Tilia lay in bed with her eyes tightly shut, deep in sleep. She was clutching a book to her chest, and the moonlight through the window softly blanketed her. Judy let out a lament while slumped over her desk. "I'm doomed." Judy collapsed onto the desk, wailing loudly in frustration. "I'm really truly doomed." Tilia gently patted her back to comfort her. "Calm down, Judy." Tilia, holding a thick stack of books, lowered her eyes. "We've only finished one subject. If you work hard from now on, the remaining subjects, that will definitely go well." Judy remained slumped on the desk, turning her face toward her friend. "You must have done well, of course. I'm just hoping I don't fail completely." Tilia sat in her seat, her pen scratching against the paper as she wrote. "I don't know about how many points I'll get." Judy turned to look at Tilia. "You always say that, but I know you do great every time. Remember that one time? You said you weren't confident, but you still took first place. It was in that liberal arts class." Tilia's quill pen came to a sudden halt. "Sorry, I shouldn't have brought that up." Judy waved her hands in a flustered manner, looking quite anxious. "It's fine." A very faint smile appeared on Tilia's lips. "Yeah, there was a time like that." A trace of melancholy touched Tilia's eyes. "That was a long time ago, even if it only happened once. 3 years ago." A hand gently closed a thick book. "Even though you still have to take the makeup exam." Tilia that stood under the archway of the long corridor, watching the crowd gathering in the distance. The sound of noisy discussions reached her ears. A conspicuous notice was posted on the bulletin board. First semester liberal arts, final exam rankings. First place, Tilia Ambrose. Tilia's eyes widened as she stared at the name on the list, letting out a short gasp of surprise. "Alex, what happened?" a student asked loudly in front of the bulletin board. "What on earth were you doing yesterday? You actually missed the exam." Alex turned his head, looking somewhat absent-minded. Alex stood in the middle of the hallway, facing the gaze of his peers, and replied in a flat tone. "I was too tired, so I fell asleep." Tilia stood not far away, clutching her books. Dot silently watching that back. "Wow, look at how indifferent you are." The people around him let out a chorus of exclamations. "This guy really is the most laid-back of all." Tilia lowered her eyes, hiding the emotions within. "He always acts like this, yet he still ends up in first place. Even though you really have to take the makeup exam this time." His companions crowded around Alex as they walked away. "Is this the confidence of the strong?" Tilia lowered her eyes and murmured softly, "Confidence." Tilia stood where light and shadow met, her face flushed and her lower lip bitten hard. "I felt so ashamed. Even if it was only for a moment, I actually felt happy because I beat Alex Davenport. It makes me feel disgusted with myself. I feel so humiliated, it's unbearable, because that sense of achievement was nothing more than something given to me by someone else's whim." A giant foot crushed a mirror, shards flying everywhere. Tilia's small figure looked precarious amidst the cracks. "Every time I look at you, my struggles seem so pathetic. Have you ever, even once in your life, fought desperately for something?" Tilia's figure continued to fall through the darkness, eventually shrinking into a tiny point of light. "That's why I hate you." Judy sat at the library table, carefully observing her friend's expression. Judy shrunk her neck back and tentatively asked, "Tilia, are you angry?" Tilia stopped her pen and turned her head. "What are you talking about? Why would I be angry?" Judy nervously twiddled her fingers and muttered in a low voice, "I just felt like you didn't really like talking about that exam." Judy lowered her head, looking somewhat dejected. "I'm always so stupid. Even though you helped me so much, my grades haven't improved at all." Judy suddenly pounced on Tilia and gripped her arm tightly. "But I'll keep working hard, so please don't leave me behind, okay?" Tilia reached out and gently stroked Judy's hair. "Stop overthinking. Why would I leave you?" Judy buried her face in Tilia's arms, her voice muffled. "Thank you. You're the only one I can rely on." Judy suddenly looked up, her eyes sparkling with hope. "If I really fail and have to repeat a year, you'll stay at school to be with me, right?" Tilia showed a troubled expression and turned her face away slightly. "That might be a bit difficult." Judy let out a wail. "Oh, why?" Tilia explained helplessly. "Sorry, I'll promise you anything except repeating a year." Judy was so anxious she was sweating, shouting out, "But if you graduate, you'll definitely find a job right away." "Tilia, do you really have the heart to be separated from me like this?" Tilia gently patted Judy's back, her gaze becoming firm. "I can't keep wasting money on tuition. I must graduate." Tilia stared out the window, her voice as light as a breeze. And then leave this place. Go anywhere. Notes were spread out on the desk, the pen tip resting quietly on the paper. Sunlight filtered through the curtains, falling on stacks of old books. A gentle breeze brushed the white curtains, making them dance. Tilia sat alone by the window, gazing into the distance. Go anywhere. Tilia. A call broke the silence. Tilia suddenly snapped back to reality, her shoulders trembling slightly, her eyes still holding a trace of lingering melancholy. Sorry, did I interrupt your concentration? Cecilia approached, her high heels clicking sharply on the floor. Cecilia tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, an elegant smile on her lips as she watched the two of them. Hello, Tilia responded politely. Judy hid behind Tilia, peeking out curiously. How were your exams today? I feel like I performed to my usual level, Tilia answered calmly. Oh, but how modest. Cecilia covered her mouth and chuckled. As a reward for our diligent second-place student, I'd like to give you a small gift. Cecilia took an exquisite square box from her person. A gift? Tilia looked confused. Yes, a gift. Cecilia reached out, a small transparent vial held between her fingertips. The vial shimmered under the light as it was gently placed on the table with a soft clink. This is holy water. My father sent it to me. The results are absolutely guaranteed. I often relied on it for help while preparing for exams. Tilia stared at the shimmering liquid and asked in a low voice, as for why you're giving it to me. I'd like to know the reason. Cecilia shrugged, acting as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Does giving something like this need a reason? Cecilia leaned down and whispered into Tilia's ear, I simply hope you can take first place in this exam. Cecilia's gaze became sharp, her tone carrying a hint of indisputable fervor. Because I really want to see you completely crush Alex Davenport. Tilia suddenly looked up, her breath catching as she met the other girl's ambitious eyes. Cecilia straightened up, looking down at her. Is that explanation enough? Tilia sat in her place, silent for a long time, letting the vial of holy water lie quietly in her sight. Tilia's eyes were filled with complex emotions. Cecilia watched the girl and said steadily, I want you to defeat Alex Davenport. Make him experience his greatest failure to date. Tilia sat in her chair and turned her head slightly, her eyes reflecting her confusion as she fell into silence. The corners of Cecilia's mouth curled up into a smile. There's no need to look at me like I'm crazy. Doing this isn't illegal, and everyone else is using it too. A slender glass bottle sat quietly on the table, the pale blue liquid inside, shimmering in the light. Tilia sat alone in the empty room, staring at the vial on the table without a word. Judy came running over in a hurry, shouting, Tilia. Judy leaned her hands on the table, looking quite anxious. Let's go. My rhetoric exam is in the other wing. We have to leave early. Tilia stood up, slung her bag over her shoulder, and organized her things. Cecilia asked softly from the side, Tilia, you said you were going to the main building, right? Yes. Cecilia turned her face slightly, watching her companions departing direction. My exam hall is in the main building too. Tilia. Dot dropped the glass bottle of holy water into her bag. Cecilia smiled as she looked ahead. Tilia shouldered her bag and stopped. Cecilia urged her softly, Go on ahead. Judy is already waiting for you. Cecilia stood in the middle of the empty hall, waving her arm. Good luck with your exam, Tilia. Tilia walked through the corridor. Judy was standing by the far door, waving vigorously. Tilia sat in her exam seat, quill in hand, writing rapidly on the paper. A male student clutched his forehead and let out a lament. 2 exams in one day. This is too cruel. I can already see my future. I'm definitely going to fail. How can a general elective exam be this hard? Tilia looked around. The exam in the other wing would end very late. He didn't have much confidence, but he studied hard. Hopefully, he'd do well. Tilia. Dot sat alone on a bench, swinging her legs. Should I wait here for Judy to come out? A crisp clinking sound came from her bag. Tilia looked down at the opening of the bag. Tilia took out the small bottle, a confused expression on her face. Why did she suddenly say something like that? Cecilia had leaned close to her ear and whispered, I really want you to defeat Alex Davenport. Tilia stared at the bottle. Did something happen between the two of them? Tilia held up the glass bottle, the liquid inside shimmering in the sunset. Anyway, this is holy water. Judy ran forward with her bag, then turned back to ask, Tilia, are you really going to drink that? Judy looked quite worried. I mean, you have to be very careful when drinking holy water, you know? Tilia was puzzled. Careful? Judy leaned in close to Tilia's ear, covering her mouth with her hand and lowering her voice. My brother told me that if you drink too much ordinary holy water, or if you drink the low-quality stuff, your body will have a strange reaction. Tilia turned her head, her expression somewhat hesitant. Like, you'll die? Judy shook her head. That only happens if you ingest a high concentration of holy water all at once. What I meant was heat. He said you'll fall into a state of heat like a wild beast. Unless you have relations with someone, you won't be able to calm down at all. Tilia couldn't help but laugh. How is that possible? Judy's face turned red with anxiety. So if you really need to use it, you must tell me. Her expression remained worried. Cecilia uses this stuff too, so it's probably not cheap junk, but you still have to be careful. Judy waved and turned to run off. See you after the exam. Tilia sat alone on the steps by a stone pillar, looking down at the small bottle in her hand, lost in thought. Noisy voices came from the distance. Tilia looked up toward the sound. A male student looked ecstatic. Wow, the effect of this holy water is insane. I have to stock up before the next exam. I can even remember exactly which page the exam questions came from. His companion reminded him in a low voice, if you want to buy it, go quickly. I went to a lot of trouble to find this stuff. The male student continued to talk to himself excitedly. I used to wonder why everyone was drinking it, but now I see it really is different. If I can keep this up, passing the graduation exams will be a piece of cake. Everyone is using it. If I don't drink it, I'll be the only loser. It's like everyone else is riding a horse while I'm the only one running barefoot. Tilia stopped and looked down at her shoes, falling into a long silence. Running barefoot, Tilia held up the glass bottle, watching the liquid slosh inside. If I drink this, will I be able to run a bit more easily too? Tilia's brow furrowed slightly, a hint of struggle in her eyes. Can I find even a little bit of peace here? Tilia slowly closed her eyes and pushed the stopper up with her thumb, making a crisp sound. But I already know that charity from others can never truly belong to me. Tilia tilted the bottle, and the clear liquid flowed from the mouth, splashing onto the cold floor tiles in tiny droplets. Rather than being a clown on horseback as others expect, I'd rather run barefoot until the very end. The liquid spread around her feet. Judy ran out from the other wing, her hands held high as she cheered loudly. Tilia, I'm finished. The liquid on the ground gradually seeped into the cracks, leaving only a damp patch shimmering in the afterglow. The first graduation exam of the Akasys Royal Academy consisted of 8 compulsory humanities subjects and 4 elective subjects. Inside the exam hall, only the scratching of quills on paper could be heard as students wrote diligently, leaving ink on the pristine exam sheets. If a student failed even one of the 12 subjects, they would be held back and might not even be able to take the second graduation exam in winter. They would have to wait another year. The first semester's graduation exams lasted about a week. The fourth-year students should have been relieved at this moment, but a commotion broke out among the crowd. Students were running in panic, their footsteps chaotic and disorganized. Judy's eyes widened, her face pale. This is a nightmare. How is this possible? A crowd of students gathered in front of the bulletin board, pointing and whispering, leaking exam questions. Can such a thing really happen? Judy let out a roar of fury. Killing him wouldn't even be enough. A prominent notice was posted on the board. Announcement regarding the leaking of fourth-year rhetoric final exam questions and the expulsion of cheaters. All answer sheets will be voided, and a retake will be conducted. Valentine Ruth, Ungrolo, Kim Vasti, Kalabrak, Gilman. These names appeared prominently on the expulsion list. Everyone had to face a retake of the rhetoric exam. Students crowded in front of the board. Is this really a makeup exam? It's impossible. Students stood in the middle of the hall, waving their arms angrily and roaring. I did so well this time. Maybe I should be glad those cheaters. I got expelled. Judy clenched her fists, her knuckles trembling violently from the force. The dean is the real problem here. Something goes wrong every day. No. The real culprit is actually. Tilia suddenly rushed out from behind and firmly covered Judy's mouth, cutting her off. Judy struggled desperately, letting out muffled whimpers. Judy's cry echoed through the hall, resonating within the empty building. The bulletin board returned to a dead silence, leaving only the voiceless words. Judy slammed her hand onto the table, her body trembling with rage. Gregory Miles, I should have dealt with that bastard long ago. Why is he the only one who escaped unscathed? Everyone who got caught was part of his gang. Judy recalled with gritted teeth, those guys whispering together. His father must have pulled strings behind the scenes. Tilia picked up her cup and took a small sip, flipping through her book with a calm expression. At this point, it's nothing to be surprised about. Judy suddenly gave a cry of alarm, clutching her cheeks with both hands, her eyes wide with extreme terror. She leaned in close to Tilia and whispered in her ear, "Don't you think this is suspicious if you think about it carefully?" Tilia was puzzled. "What are you talking about? Count Miles and the dean are best friends, right? Didn't Gregory pass the entrance exam because of that? Think about it. It doesn't make sense for someone like him to even get into this academy." Gregory silently poured a potion into a cup. Judy slammed the table again, her body shaking with anger. "Anyway, I'm so mad I could go crazy." Judy stood up abruptly, knocking over a chair. "They're the cause of all this chaos." Tilia comforted her. "Calm down. We need to study. The retake is in 4 hours." Tilia picked up her cup and took a sip, her eyes falling back on her book. "But once we're done with the retake, the first semester will finally be over." Tilia's movements suddenly stiffened. "What is it?" Judy tilted her head in confusion. Tilia put down her cup, her brow furrowing slightly. "This water tastes a bit strange. Maybe there was something on the cup. I'll go wash it in the restroom." Tilia stood up with the cup and walked quickly toward the library exit. Gregory watched her back. Judy called out, "Okay, come back quickly." Gregory stood in the distance, watching Tilia leave with a dark expression. He followed her quickly, trailing behind. Their figures disappeared into the depths of the hallway. Cecilia rested her chin on her hand, her fingertips lightly tapping the table. "Maybe next time I should paint them black instead of such a conspicuous bright color." The cup slammed onto the sink, water splashing everywhere. Tilia supported herself on the counter with one hand, her body swaying as she lost her balance. Something's not right. Tilia stared at herself in the mirror, her breathing becoming rapid and heavy. "My head is so dizzy. My body is so hot. Did I suddenly catch a cold? Maybe I should go to the infirmary for some fever medicine." "No, it's not a cold." Tilia stopped, her consciousness beginning to blur and scatter. "I want someone, anyone, to do something to me." Tilia suddenly covered her mouth and nose, her eyes trembling with terror. "What was I just thinking? Even ordinary things, if taken in excess, will cause a strange reaction in the body. That's a state of heat, like an animal falling into a frenzy. If you don't sleep with someone, but it's absolutely impossible to calm down." Tilia stared intently at the mirror, her hands braced against the cold tiles. "That must be a lie. Why? Why me?" Tilia suddenly turned her head to look at the water cup on the sink. "When and how'd he do it?" Tilia looked toward the door. "It's Gregory Miles." He was hiding in the shadows of the corner, his hands neurotically clasped together, a twisted smile on his face. "Come out now. No matter where you hide, it's going to be very interesting, Tilia." Tilia held her breath, her eyes wide with fury, her pupils contracting sharply. That despicable bastard. He actually went this far. Tilia clenched her fists so hard her knuckles shook. "What on earth does he take me for? To use something like this on me?" Tilia stood in the middle of the dim corridor with her head lowered, falling into a deathly silence. Now is not the time for such thoughts. Tilia suddenly looked up, enduring the abnormality in her body as she looked toward the end of the corridor. Gregory was blocking the door. She couldn't get out that way. Tilia leaned against the wall, moving with difficulty, her body swaying violently. She had to escape another way. Tilia climbed over the windowsill, her hands gripping the stone edge tightly. The cold wind whistled past her ears. Gently, just a bit more gently, Tilia gritted her teeth, forcing her weak body to stand. She collapsed weakly to the ground, her back sliding down the wall with a painful groan. "I managed to escape, but what now?" Tilia curled up in the corner of the empty corridor, breathing heavily. The exam was about to start. She couldn't possibly go to the exam hall in this state. Tilia looked down at her trembling hands, sweat dripping from her fingertips. "What should I do?" Tilia closed her eyes tight, her face flushed as she panted. "It's so hot. I can't take it anymore." Tilia stood up unsteadily, her steps faltering as she moved forward. "Someone, anyone, please save me." Tilia reached out a trembling hand, her fingertips weakly grasping at the air. Please, anyone, do something to me. Tilia's vision was blurred as she looked ahead. A figure was lying on a bench. Tilia's eyes widened, her pupils trembling with shock, her cheeks flushed with an abnormal red. Alex Davenport, Tilia cried out in her heart. Alex sat up from the bench, still holding an open book, looking somewhat confused. Why are you here? Tilia stumbled back, her body trembling from the effort of self-control. No, not you. Anyone else, but not you. Tilia turned around, trying to force her heavy steps to flee. That piece of trash, called Alex. Tilia bit her lower lip, sweat sliding down her face, her consciousness struggling in the chaos. Alex stood frozen, watching Tilia's pained expression with eyes full of surprise. Absolutely not. It can't be that trash, Alex. Alex's eyes widened, his pupils shaking with shock. Absolutely not. Tilia gritted her teeth, tears welling in her eyes, her vision blurred by pain. Are you saying you plan to take the exam in this state? You could go kneel and beg the professor. If that doesn't work, you could have Judy find a priest or someone. It's too late to try those things now. Think about it carefully, Tilia. This is the only way to solve this as quickly as possible. Though surrounded by many women, we'll be happy to accept your proposal. And the only one among them who won't have any special feelings for you is that man, Alex Davenport. Tilia kept her head down, sweat trickling down her cheeks. It soaked her collar. Do you know? Alex Davenport. Alex. A cold sweat broke out on his forehead as he stood there. He stared ahead in disbelief. Will you sleep with me? Tilia buried her head deep. Her long hair covered most of her face. Her hands gripped her collar tightly, her body trembling slightly in the light and shadow. You, do you know me? Tilia avoided his gaze. I'm asking you a question. Alex furrowed his brows, his sharp gaze scrutinizing the girl before him. I said, do you know me? I must be crazy, Tilia thought, closing her eyes. A deep flush rose to her cheeks, and tears welled in her eyes. Why? Why would I say something like that? At a time like this, in a place like this? No matter how many women Alex Davenport had around him, he was never the kind of man who would just pick any woman. Tilia walked alone across the empty square, her back looking lonely and stiff. Sorry, it's nothing. Tilia turned around abruptly, her long hair tracing an arc in the air. She walked past him quickly. Alex stood stunned for a moment and let out a short exclamation. Tilia Ambrose, what on earth is wrong with you? Alex reached out and grabbed her wrist, his fingertips digging into her slender arm to stop her from leaving. I told you it's nothing. What do you mean it's nothing? Your face looks terrible. Alex held on to Tilia tightly. I told you I'm fine. Alex watched her in silence, his eyes filled with scrutiny and agitation. Huh? Tilia opened her mouth slightly, her breathing becoming rapid. A clear flush spread across her cheeks. If I don't sleep with you, are you planning to sleep with some other man? Alex increased the pressure of his grip, his knuckles tightening with the effort. Are you planning to go mess around with some other bastard? Yes, Tilia answered softly, her eyes downcast as she stood before him. If you're scared, just say so. I don't have the habit of forcing myself on women against their will. Alex leaned one hand against the wall, trapping Tilia between his chest and the wall. Since it's already come to this, how could I be scared? Tilia panted heavily. Alex Davenport. Alex flinched slightly and lowered his gaze to the girl right in front of him. Then, shall we start? Now? Alex refused. No. First, before doing anything, you need to wash up. I don't sleep with people who aren't clean. Alex opened the door to the room nearby. Towels are in the cabinet above the sink. Come out after you've washed up. Alex turned around, pushed the door open, and walked to the outer room, leaving behind only a cold back. I'll wash somewhere else, Tilia thought, standing alone in the center of the room, staring blankly at the door. The bathroom door was slowly pushed open, making a slight creaking sound. The shower head hung down, and crystal-clear water droplets fell intermittently, splashing against the cold tiles. Tilia panted heavily, sweat sliding down her messy hair. My head hurt so much. Wrapped in a large bathrobe, Tilia staggered toward the door. Her bare feet stepped on the cold floor tiles. How much longer do I have to stay like this? I want to leave. I must leave. Tilia stopped, her eyes unfocused as she stared ahead. An abnormal flush rose to her cheeks, and her breathing grew heavier. Tilia's shoulders shook violently with fear. This isn't me. This definitely isn't me. Tilia stumbled back, bumping into the edge of the sink. She gripped the counter tightly with both hands. I'm not like this. It's impossible. It can't be like this. Tilia lunged at the door and twisted the metal handle forcefully. Why? Why won't it open? Tilia, what's wrong? Alex's voice came through the thick door, carrying a hint of confusion and concern. The door won't open. Tilia cried out weakly for help. You have to pull it inward to open it. Tilia, can you let go of the handle first? Alex turned the knob from outside, the metal lock core vibrating loudly. The door was pushed open suddenly. Alex rushed into the room, looking panicked as he searched for her. Tilia, your voice. Why does it sound like that? Alex froze in place, looking at the girl slumped on the floor. Tilia's clothes were in disarray. Her cheeks were flushed, and tears kept falling from the corners of her eyes. Come out first. I have something to give you. Alex looked away and turned to walk to the outer room, his footsteps appearing somewhat awkward. Why? Do even you think I look strange right now? Tilia lifted her head, her unfocused eyes chasing his back, her voice hoarse and trembling. This is impossible, don't you? Alex turned his head back sharply, his gaze sweeping over Tilia's moist eyes. His breath hitched instantly. Damn it! Tilia lowered her head, a blurred smile actually curling at the corner of her mouth. Sweat dripped down her burning cheeks. Alex's Adam's apple bobbed. An imperceptible flush rose to his cheeks, and his eyes became deep and complex. Alex, I'm done washing. Tilia reached out a trembling hand and gently grabbed a corner of Alex's clothes, her fingertips slowly tightening on the fabric. So what are we doing now? Tilia sat on the floor, looking up at the man before her, her fingertips tightly hooked into Alex's palm, unwilling to let go. Alex leaned down, his hands braced on either side of Tilia, enveloping her in a shadow. Don't regret this later, Alex warned in a low voice, his breath brushing against the tip of her nose. A dangerous glint flickered in his eyes. You started this. Alex reached out to support the back of Tilia's neck, his fingers sinking into her damp, long hair, and he kissed her fiercely. Tilia closed her eyes, letting the scorching heat overwhelm her. Alex embraced Tilia tightly, lowering his head to steady his lips against hers. His hands wrapped around her back as they both fell onto the bed. Tilia's long hair that scattered across the pillow. With a muffled grunt, Alex leaned over her face, his breathing becoming rapid. Tilia opened her mouth slightly, letting out fragmented gasps. Tilia lay on her back on the bed, raising her arm to cover her eyes, murmuring with a flush on her face. She extended her toe and lightly kicked Alex's leg. You take your clothes off too. Alex frowned, his expression looking a bit awkward. I hate being the only one like this. Alex raised his hand to his collar and forcefully ripped open the buttons of his shirt. Honestly, you. He tossed his discarded shirt aside and signaled in a low voice here. Alex, bare-chested, stared at Tilia. Are you satisfied now? Alex leaned down and buried himself in the crook of Tilia's neck. Tilia tilted her head back and let out a muffled groan. Alex reached behind him. He unbuttoned his pants. Tilia's eyes snapped open, and she let out a flushed cry. Clink! Wait! Alex stopped his movements and looked down at her. Why? Are you scared? Tilia hurriedly looked away and stammered her rebuttal. No, it's not that, it's just... Alex braced himself above her, his tone carrying a hint of teasing. You were so confident just now. He reached down, his 5 fingers firmly interlocking with Tilia's. But no, you can't back down now. Tilia bit her lip and lifted her head with false bravado. Who said I was backing down? This kind of thing is no big deal at all. Don't get the wrong idea. A playful smile curled at the corner of Alex's mouth. Fine. This is strange. I shouldn't be feeling this way. Alex tightened his grip, interlacing his fingers with Tilia's and pinning them against the bed. Alex leaned down to kiss Tilia's neck. I've always longed for Davenport. She snapped her eyes open, her pupils trembling slightly. Longed for him to touch me. Tilia lay on her back on the bed, letting Alex bury his head in her chest and neck. This is all because of the holy water. If it weren't for the holy water, I wouldn't care about someone like him at all. Alex let out a light laugh and called her name. Tilia, you didn't know before, did you, that you'd do something like this with me? You used to hate me, didn't you? So much that you felt disgusted just being near me. Tilia's eyes widened, and she retorted with a flush. Did you think I knew I'd do such a disgusting thing with you? Alex lowered his eyes slightly, a curve forming at the corner of his mouth. I knew. Snowflakes fell silently in the night sky. A lone figure walked through the snow. From the very beginning. I didn't know. Alex gazed into Tilia's eyes, a flush rising to his cheeks. I knew that one day, you and I would end up like this. Tilia's eyes widened as she stared at the face so close to hers. What are you doing? Alex held her chin and kissed her deeply again. Tilia closed her eyes and let out a muffled groan. The two of them were entangled on the large bed, their clothes piled up in disarray. Sunlight streamed into the room through the tall windows. Tilia lay weakly on the pillow and let out a low moan. I have to get dressed. I must be crazy. What I just did was simply unreasonable. Alex pressed close to her from behind. Tilia cried out in sharp pain. What's wrong? Does it still hurt? Do you want me to get you some water? Tilia closed her eyes and shook her head. I'm fine. It's not because of that. She turned her head to look at the clock on the table. The hands had already passed the scheduled time. The exam. Alex froze, letting out a confused sound. Huh? Tilia sat up abruptly, grabbing her scattered clothes with a panicked expression. I have to go take the makeup exam now. Alex, bare-chested, looked at her in shock. Are you going in that state? Tilia threw off the covers and shouted in a panic. That's right. The rhetoric makeup exam starts in less than 10 minutes. She knelt on the thick carpet, frantically searching around. My clothes. Where are my clothes? Alex picked up the shirt from the floor and handed it to her. Here. He approached Tilia from behind, holding open the shirt sleeves. Tilia obediently put her arms through the sleeves, turning her face to look at him. This guy, honestly, he skillfully adjusted her collar, his movements exceptionally natural. How is he so skilled at this? Is it because he's very experienced? Alex knelt before Tilia, his long fingers nimbly fastening the buttons. Don't go yet. Wait a moment. I have something to give you. Tilia froze and asked in confusion. Give me? Alex stood up and walked to the side, instructing her without looking back. Just wait here. Tilia sat alone on the edge of the bed, watching his departing back in silence. She lowered her eyes slightly and let out a soft sigh. That's right. It was my first time. Tilia reached out and gripped the bedsheet, her fingertips trembling slightly as she stared at the trace of blood. He wouldn't say he didn't know it was my first time, would he? Or say he'll take responsibility or something. Alex stood at the table with his back to the bed, rummaging through something. Tilia Ambrose. He turned around, holding a delicate small medicine bottle in his hand. Drink this before you go. I should have given it to you when we were in the hallway, but I couldn't. Drink it now. Tilia looked up at the hand reaching out to her. Is this? Well, you said you had to give me the moment you saw me. A contraceptive. To think I actually thought he would take responsibility. One absurd thought. Tilia took the bottle, tilted her head back, and drained it in one gulp. As expected, there was a reason I chose Alex Davenport. She placed the empty bottle heavily on the table with a sharp clink. I don't need to thank you, do I? Tilia stood up and smoothed her skirt. One more thing. It goes without saying, but I hope no one finds out about what happened today. Tilia turned her face away, avoiding his gaze. You don't want to be associated with me either, right? I really have to go. If anyone sees me leaving like this, especially with Alex Davenport, it'll be over. Alex stood by the door, bare-chested, watching her with a stiff expression. What are you doing? Tilia walked to the door and grabbed the handle. You should hurry and get dressed for the exam, too. She pushed open the heavy door and walked into the hallway without looking back, disappearing into the light and shadow. The door slammed shut with a loud bang. Alex stood alone in the empty room, raising his hand to cover his forehead and letting out a short, cold laugh. He gritted his teeth, his eyes full of resentment and anger. Seriously, are you planning to just brush it off like that? The makeup exam is over. Please submit your question papers and answer sheets together. Tilia sat at the long table and stretched hard. Finally free, she looked down at the exam paper in her hand. With this score, I should be able to graduate smoothly. Tilia stood up and walked toward the podium with her exam paper. Small whispers filled the classroom. A 1 was written on the blackboard for the number of absentees. The person who didn't show up for the exam. It couldn't be Davenport, could it? He doesn't seem in a hurry to graduate. That guy used to skip exams often, just because it was a hassle. This time, he probably didn't show up for a similar reason. Judy rushed over suddenly, hugged Tilia, and shouted her name. Tilia, where on earth did you go? Do you know how worried I was when I couldn't find you? Tilia apologized softly, explaining that she had suddenly felt unwell. Judy buried herself in Tilia's arms, whispering her worries. Judy opened her eyes, looking a bit nervous. Can you get indigestion just from drinking water? Tilia responded softly, yes. I was lying in the infirmary and lost track of time. Judy sat beside her, her voice carrying a hint of comfort. You must have been too nervous, but it's great that you made it to the exam. That's wonderful. Judy lowered her head, her voice becoming a bit low. I was worried something had happened to you. Actually, it's because Gregory Miles was near the bathroom you went to. Tilia froze, her flushed face filled with confusion. Miles? Judy nodded vigorously, looking even more worried. That's right. He was wandering around the entrance of the girls' bathroom. Do you know what he did when he saw me? Gregory stood in the middle of the hallway, looking down at the petite Judy, greeting her in a frivolous tone. Hey, Judy Wells, did Miss Ambrose go to the bathroom? Judy hunched her shoulders, hugging herself tightly, unable to stop trembling. That's how he asked me. It was absolutely chilling. That bastard. He was definitely trying to cause trouble for you. Tilia lowered her eyes and softly agreed with Judy. Yeah, I'm sure that's what he was thinking. Since he's gone this far, I'll make sure he gets kicked out of this school in the most humiliating way possible. Judy leaned close to Tilia's face, her eyes full of concern. But are you really okay? Your face looks so pale. I have a pass to leave school. Should I go out and buy you some medicine? Tilia smiled helplessly. What are you talking about? You got that pass because of your family gathering tonight, right? Judy grabbed Tilia's arm and protested loudly. Is a gathering more important than you being this sick? Letters and parcels were neatly arranged on the desk. A quill pen rested quietly to the side. Of course it's important. Your brother Rainer is returning home for the first time in 3 years today. Tilia looked at Judy, her gaze softening. I know how much you've been looking forward to this meeting. If you cancel your plans for me, I'll feel even worse. So just go. Judy squirmed reluctantly, but Tilia saw her friend struggle and suggested softly, if you're really that worried, just buy me a chocolate bar on your way back. That's all I need. Sunlight spilled over the desk, the shadow of the pen nib, stretching long and slanted. Tilia clutched her abdomen tightly, her fingertips gripping the fabric of her clothes. My stomach hurts so much. She collapsed onto the bed, curling her body. I can understand the back pain, but why does my stomach hurt so much too? I will never tell Judy about what happened with Alex. If I told her the truth, Judy would definitely cry. She'd feel sorry and think she didn't help at all. Tilia closed her eyes, her brows furrowed in pain. I don't want to see that. Anyway, it's no big deal. Besides, none of this matters. Right now, I'm living a fake life. I'm just having a nightmare. As long as I get through this, it'll all be over soon. Soon, the life I planned for myself, my real life, will begin. So it's okay. Tears slid down from the corners of her eyes. Tilia turned her head, her fingers tightly clutching her messy hair as she gasped for air. Alex looked down at her and called her name softly. Tilia. He looked confused and reached out to brush her hair aside. Why are you crying so hard? Does it hurt that much? Tilia's eyes were wide, tears welling up. Or is it? Alex leaned close to her face and whispered, have you always been such a crybaby? Bare-chested, he locked Tilia tightly in his arms, watching her trembling pupils. Tilia snapped her eyes open, her pupils contracting in fear. Cold sweat ran down her cheeks. She woke up from the dream, sat up abruptly, and breathed heavily in the dim bedroom. Tilia held her head in her hands, her fingertips sinking deep into her hair. Why was that dream so vivid? It made me remember all sorts of unnecessary things. Alex leaned down and kissed Tilia's forehead. Don't cry, Tilia. When you cry, I don't know what to do. Alex lowered his eyes, his long eyelashes covering his pupils. I don't know if you've said similar things to others before. Tilia curled up in the corner of the bed, hugging her knees tightly. But that won't work on me. Tilia Ambrose, how could you do this to me? Why? He stood in the middle of the dim room, broken debris scattered at his feet. Who do you think I'm living like this for? Tilia watched all this in horror, letting out a faint murmur. Mom, Mom. Her mother turned her head suddenly, tears on her face, her eyes full of despair. Tilia. She walked forward quickly and grabbed Tilia's shoulders tightly. My poor daughter. Her mother knelt on the ground, crying out frantically, you can't live a life like this. You must never believe a man's words. Her mother held the young Tilia tightly, with so much force it felt as if she were trying to rub her in her own body. You can't let yourself be fooled by love. Otherwise, you'll end up just like your mother. Do you understand? Her mother wept, her voice echoing in the empty room, saying he only loves me, saying he'd dedicate his life to me. She threw her head back and laughed, tears streaming down her cheeks. I was fooled by those sweet words. It completely ruined my life. Mother and daughter huddled in the faint light of the hallway, their figures looking broken. I won't be fooled again. Never. Tilia sat on the bed, hugging her knees tightly, her fingertips pressing hard into her arms. The door was pushed open suddenly. Judy shouted, Tilia, wake up. Tilia turned her head, looking a bit tired. Judy, why are you back so early? Judy rushed into the room, her tone urgent. That doesn't matter. Look at this. Tilia looked confused. What? Judy held an exquisite box in her hands, her eyes sparkling. Someone sent you a gift. A gift. A dark blue gift box lay there quietly, tied with a delicate ribbon. Tilia leaned down to look at the box on the table. What is this? Judy was a bit puzzled. I don't know. The door manager told me to give it to you. Tilia stared at the gift box. This is strange. This ribbon looks like it's made of velvet. No one would send me something like this. Tilia reached out, pinched one end of the ribbon, and slowly pulled it. Judy's eyes widened, and she let out an exclamation. Hey, what's this? The gift box was completely opened. Inside were neatly arranged medicine bottles and jars, exuding a professional aura. Tilia asked in a low voice, is it medicine? Judy picked up one of the brown bottles and examined it closely. This one is good for bruises, and this one is an ointment for wounds. Tilia lowered her eyes and looked at the fine medicines. It looks like these were all prepared by a high-level pharmacist. Judy turned her head to look at Tilia. Do you know who might have sent this? Tilia thought of Alex. Tilia lowered her eyes. No. Judy looked up, a hint of inquiry in her eyes. Really? Judy turned around suddenly and ran toward the door. Now's not the time for that. I bought chocolate on my way here. Judy knelt on the floor, holding a large oval gift box, her face beaming with a bright smile. Tajda. Okay, actually, I didn't buy it. My mom did. Tilia stood nearby, looking at the exquisite box. Was it from a countess? I'll have to apologize to her later. Judy lowered her head, her fingers gently stroking the gift box. It's really nothing. Sunlight hit the Grand Academy building, and bursts of laughter came from the corridors. Since the makeup exams are over, don't you feel like you can finally live again? The classroom was in chaos. Students waved their arms excitedly, and some even jumped onto the desks. Who wants to get some notices and then go out to play today? A boy wearing glasses pushed his frames, the lenses flashing. Look at this guy. The first round just ended, and he's already slacking off. I live for the moment. Another boy leaned back in his chair, hands behind his head. We have to have as much fun as we can before the grades come out. You're right. A prominent notice was posted on the bulletin board. During the grading period, the campus echoed with the noise of students. Judy's eyes were wide, her pupils trembling slightly, her expression looking a bit dazed. It's strange, Tilia. I think I might have gone crazy from studying. Tilia pressed her hand to her aching forehead, her face looking a bit grim. Over the past few days, no matter where she went, she always saw Alex Davenport. Judy suddenly covered her cheeks and shook her head violently. I must be hallucinating, right? Tilia stood behind Judy, staring straight ahead. No, Judy, it's real. Over the past few days, Alex has been following them. Tilia lowered her head slightly, a cold sweat breaking out on her forehead. To be precise, he's not following us. He's been following me. Judy looked a bit tired. I think I didn't get enough sleep last night. I should go back to the dorm and rest. Tilia held her shoulder and responded softly. Okay, you go ahead. I have a book to return to the library, so I'll stop by there on the way. Tilia stepped forward. Alex stood by the far wall with his arms crossed, watching her departing back in silence. Alex remained silent, his gaze following her the entire time. Tilia reached out, her fingertips brushing against the books on the shelf with a slight rustling sound. What on earth is he thinking? If he followed me in broad daylight, I could at least say something. Tilia quickened her pace, looking a bit flustered. But he always disappears when I move, and then suddenly reappears the next moment. Forget it. I don't have time to worry about that. Tilia carried the heavy books through the high shelves of the library. Once the break is over, the final semester will begin. Two students stood at the corner of a bookshelf, talking in hushed tones. Did you hear? Gregory Miles was finally caught. Tilia stopped abruptly, her eyes widening in shock. Her heart skipped a beat. I heard the news too. They say Gregory was the mastermind, right? Tilia hid in the shadow of the bookshelf, holding her breath to listen. Apparently, he's been colluding with the dean since the entrance exams. So, being expelled won't be the only problem, will it? The two students walked away together, their voices echoing in the empty hall. Yes, they're investigating everyone involved. I'm wondering if the dean will be replaced because of this. Tilia turned her head, her expression looking solemn. What? Two blurry figures appeared in the shadows. A tall man was shaking hands with the pudgy dean. So what Judy said was true. Even though he was expelled before I could take action, it's a good thing. But Tilia raised her finger to her lower lip, lost in thought. He clearly escaped unscathed last time. Why now of all times? But the important thing isn't the leaked exam questions, a student whispered into their companion's ear. The other, that showed a look of horror. This time, they searched his dorm room. His room? The two students stood by the high railing of the library, nervously exchanging information. They found something. Tilia hid in the shadow behind the bookshelf, holding her breath and listening to the activity above. Found what? Her toes suddenly kicked the edge of the bookshelf, making a dull thud. Tilia lost her balance and leaned backward, letting out a cry. Whoa, help! The heavy books slipped from her hands and slammed onto the floor. A pair of strong arms suddenly wrapped around her waist, steadily catching her swaying body. Alex leaned down and whispered in Tilia's ear, "Be careful." The scattered books lay quietly on the wooden floor. Alex tightened his arms, bringing her whole body into his embrace. His gaze locked onto her face. "You almost got yourself hurt." A heavy book fell to the ground. Alex reminded her in a low voice, "Be careful." He pressed close to Tilia from behind, his warm breath brushing past her ear. "You get hurt easily." The two students were startled and looked around. "Did you hear something just now?" "I heard it too." Tilia pushed Alex's hands away. "This." She looked around nervously, then kept her distance from Alex. Tilia looked into the distance in a panic. "Someone's coming. Let's get out of here." Alex picks up a book from the ground and hands it to Delia. She stops in her tracks and falls into silence. Alex lowers his eyes. He has that look in them again. Those elusive, unsettling eyes. Delia rests a hand against her forehead. "Alex Davenport, follow me." Delia walks quickly through the sun-drenched atrium. "I'll get straight to the point." She stops and stares at his back. "The medicine box that appeared in my dorm a week ago. You sent it, didn't you?" Alex turns around and silently lowers his gaze. Only he would send something like that. There is even an ointment for healing wounds inside. "I don't need it. Take it back." "I'll say it again. I have no intention of getting involved with you just because of what happened. I'd much prefer it if we could act as if nothing ever occurred." Alex listens quietly, his eyes downcast and his expression unreadable. "I thought he would be the least of my worries, but it turns out he's the biggest headache of all." Delia keeps her eyes lowered, avoiding the man's gaze. "So what I'm trying to say is..." She looks up, staring directly at him. "Can you stop following me everywhere? It's really bothering me." Alex stands frozen, clutching the heavy books in his arms. He looks somewhat bewildered. He silently bows his head, shadows obscuring the upper half of his face. Delia lets out a long sigh, her brow furrowed. "What?" Alex raises a hand and covers his face tightly, whispering her name. "Delia Ambrose." He lowers his hand, a playful smile playing on his lips. "I think you've misunderstood something. I have never stalked you." Delia looks confused as she watches him. "Really? Then who is the person who's been haunting me like a ghost all week?" Alex walks ahead with a composed look. "Our paths simply happened to overlap. I went to the lecture hall to see a professor, and I came to the library because I needed to borrow books." Alex leans down, bringing his face close to Delia's. "You don't own this academy, do you? Why act as if you're the only one allowed to be here, Delia?" Delia clenches her fists, her knuckles trembling slightly. Is he really going to be this despicable? Delia snaps her head up, eyes wide, and questions him loudly. "Alex Davenport, just how old are you to be acting so childishly?" Alex chuckles. "I'm clearly an adult. I think I proved that quite clearly last time." He raises a hand to his chin, looking perfectly composed. "I am a fully capable adult." Images from her memory overlap. Alex leaning over her in bed, their breaths mingling, him gazing at her with a flushed face. Delia stands frozen, staring blankly ahead. She suddenly snaps out of it, her cheeks flushing crimson as she growls through gritted teeth. "Hey, you jerk." A brilliant smile spreads across Alex's face. He looks ahead with a radiant expression. Delia stares at his smiling face. Why is he smiling like that? She looks away, her tone cold. "Forget it. I just hope these coincidences stop happening. I have no desire to be associated with you. My goal is to graduate quietly." Alex turns his head and responds nonchalantly. "Then go ahead, Delia. Who's stopping you from graduating?" He stops, his tone turning serious. "That really was just a coincidence. As for the medicine I sent, that was just basic politeness. So don't overthink it." Delia furrows her brow, staring silently at the ground. Alex lowers his eyes, his expression darkening slightly. "You were hurt, and I left quite a few marks on you, didn't I?" Delia shyly turns her face away. Alex sighs helplessly. "Calling a private doctor would have been too much, so I just sent the medicine box. Isn't that obvious? Since we are nothing to each other. Delia closes her eyes, letting her hair flutter in the wind. Those elusive eyes. What was I thinking? Those looks meant absolutely nothing. Alex stands there, looking somewhat awkward. "I really picked a perfect piece of trash." Delia opens her eyes, a self-deprecating smile on her lips. You're right. I'm misunderstood. I'm sorry. She places a hand over her heart and looks at him with a flushed face. Thank you, Alex Davenport. Alex watches her in silence, a flash of complex emotion in his eyes. Delia turns and walks away quickly. As you said, I hope those coincidences don't happen again. Alex stands still, watching her figure recede into the distance. He stands alone in the courtyard, staring at the empty archway, looking quite lonely. Night falls, and the full moon hangs high above the spired buildings. Basic politeness. Delia lies in bed, staring blankly at the ceiling. So all of that was just basic politeness. She holds a shell-shaped chocolate between her fingertips under the moonlight. She examines it repeatedly. Delia lies on her back on the large bed, her long hair spreading out like seaweed. Holding the sweet, she falls into a long silence. That's right, there's no need to overthink it. She lets go, allowing the chocolate to fall back into the gift box beside her. Because Alex Davenport and I are destined to have no relationship. The last day of the semester finally arrives. Akasis Royal Academy begins its month-long break starting today. Judy says goodbye reluctantly. Delia, I'll contact you. You must come visit my house, okay? Delia raises her hand to wave at Judy inside the carriage. I know. Sit down properly or you'll get hurt. Judy grips the curtains, her eyes misty as she shouts her farewell. Delia, I'll miss you. The carriage rattles away, but Judy's voice still echoes. Have a great vacation. Delia's head is snapped to the side by a blow. You call this a report card? A hand grips the paper so tightly the knuckles turn white. How many times do I have to tell you? Bradley roars, his face contorted. If you don't take first place, it's meaningless. You need the title of top student to prove you are capable of raising a worthy heir. You useless thing. Delia stands still, looking at the report card at her feet. Its edges are torn. It clearly shows second place. That monster, Alex Davenport. I heard that day that he even missed an exam and had to take a makeup test. Delia walks through the hallway, pushes open the heavy doors, and watches the figures talking in the distance. He must have lost many points, but even so, he still took first place. If it were me, I could never reach his level. Delia Ambrose. Bradley raises his right hand, preparing to slap his daughter. You wench, haven't you woken up yet? Delia responds calmly. Is that really wise? Father. Bradley stops, his eyes wide. What? Delia lowers her eyes. I already have an appointment to go to Mrs. Wells' manor tomorrow. Not for dinner. Delia tilts her face up slightly to look at the furious man. You surely can't let me see them with my face like this. Bradley freezes, stammering out broken words. That. He suddenly turns and roars at his daughter. You fool, why are you only telling me this now? Bradley frantically flips through documents on his desk, shouting without looking back. I'll go call the priest right now. Get to your room immediately. Delia stands by the door, reaching up to adjust the bow on her collar. Thank you, Father. Damn it, why did it have to be the Wells family? Bradley is left alone in the study, clawing at his hair frantically. This is a huge deal. They say there's a gold vein hidden in that abandoned mine under the Wells name. We just need to use some smooth talk to convince Count Wells to sell the mine to us. Once we find that gold vein. But we can't start mining until the Count sells it. Bradley stares at the letter in his hand, cold sweat on his brow. I finally managed to get in his good graces, and now that girl is causing trouble again. He clenches his fist, his knuckles cracking. He slams the thick stack of papers, dot hard onto the desk. Bradley grits his teeth, his facial muscles twitching with rage. Once you graduate from the academy, I'll sell you to the highest bidder, no matter what. Delia keeps her head down, her long hair hiding half her face. A clear red mark remains on her cheek. She stands silently. What should I do? Delia walks alone through the empty hall toward the stairs to the second floor. The dinner at the Wells Manor was a lie. Do I really have to contact Judy? Good grief. The house becomes so noisy the moment you return. George leans on the second floor railing, looking down at Delia. What trouble did you cause this time? Don't tell me you were messing around at the academy. Honestly, women should just stay home, make themselves pretty, and wait to be sold for a good price to a wealthy family. That's all. He rubs his chin, his eyes full of mockery. I don't know why Father sent you to the academy to fill your head with useless things. Tell me the truth. Did you sell your body to the professors? Delia's eyes remain downcast, her voice icy. Why would I do something so stupid? She walks straight toward the stairs, her footsteps echoing in the empty corridor. I'm not a failure like you, who couldn't even pass the entrance exam. George stands frozen, staring at her back with wide eyes. You. He clenches his fists, knuckles cracking. It seems you haven't been beaten in a while, have you? Delia stops and turns her head to look back at her brother. Hit me if you want, but you'd better remember that I'm going to the Wells Manor tomorrow. You should keep acting like your usual dignified, proper self. After all, that's the only way you can trick a naive rich girl, just like father did, isn't it? George trembles with rage, pointing up the stairs as he screeches hysterically. You wench, come back here. Delia Ambrose, this is a disaster. I'd rather just worry about my grades. Delia stands by the window, her hair fluttering in the breeze, her silhouette projected into the dim room. This feeling is terrible. I just want to die. The door is slammed shut. Delia slides down against the door onto the cold floor, burying her face between her knees. Delia, my lovely daughter. A voice from her memory echoes in her ears. A gentle woman holds the young girl, her fingertips lightly touching the girl's brow, her eyes full of smiles. My poor daughter. The woman's face becomes clear. Her deep green eyes are filled with sorrow. That was Evelyn Palmer. She was the third daughter of a wealthy count and an outstanding graduate of Akas's Royal Academy. She was my mother. Mother didn't want to live as just someone's wife or mother. She wanted to exist as Evelyn. She resolutely broke off her engagement to a frontier marquis and ran off with a suitcase to a penniless but seemingly honest man, Baron Ambrose. Mother's life fell into hell the moment she trusted father. After the marriage, father showed his true colors and cruelly destroyed her. Mother became a mere decoration in this house, withering away like a parched flower in her isolation. Delia, you are so smart, my kind and brilliant daughter. Mother leaned against the headboard, whispering as she stroked her young daughter's face. If only you weren't a girl. Delia looked up, confused. Delia, do you understand? The moment we trust someone, we are already dead. We will die and disappear forever. Delia's eyes snap open, her pupils trembling with extreme terror. She cries out with all her strength, Mother, Mother, the cause of death, an accidental fall. Mother's broken soul finally vanished completely. Delia kneels in the moonlight by the window, weeping into her hands. A lone shoe that lies on a cold floor. Delia huddles in a dark corner, her hands covering her mouth, letting out a stifled sob. She collapses onto the cold floor, gasping for breath, her body trembling from intense pain. The Wells family. Delia's head hangs low, her hair scattered messily over her shoulders. Since I lied about going to the Wells Manor. She looks up at the window where a faint light shines through. I must contact Judy. Delia looks down at her hands, her fingertips trembling slightly. I'll just tell Judy that I accidentally fell down the stairs. It'll be fine. On the wall hangs an old portrait of a young girl nestled in her mother's arms. The image looks exceptionally serene in the dim light. Everything will be okay. Delia kneels alone in the middle of the empty room, letting the weak morning light wash over her, as if she wants to bury herself completely in the shadows. The Grand Manor stands tall. A fountain dances in the center of the courtyard. Judy runs over, lifting her skirts, a brilliant smile on her face. She cheers loudly, Thank you for coming, Delia. I hope it wasn't a bother, asking you over so suddenly. I plan to see you next week, but my mother said today was fine. Delia shakes her head slightly, responding gently. Not at all. I was just about to contact you, Judy. Judy looks delighted and skips forward. Really? It seems we were thinking the same thing. Judy takes Delia's arm and asks with concern, Is everything okay at home? Nothing special happened, right? Delia turns her face away, answering calmly. Nothing special. It's the same as always. Judy stops and looks at her companion, falling into a brief silence. Delia, a woman dressed in a magnificent gown, walks in and greets them warmly. Welcome, dear. You must be exhausted from the journey. Delia stops, responding in a soft, surprised voice. Delia bows slightly, addressing her respectfully. Countess Wells. Countess Wells clasps her hands in front of her, smiling at the girl. Didn't I say you don't need to be so formal with me? Heavens, Delia, every time I see you, you seem to grow more elegant. I wish our Judy would learn from you. Judy stands aside and protests. What about me? Countess Wells puts an arm around Judy's shoulder, pressing her cheek against her daughter's hair with a tender expression. Honestly, without you, I don't know how Judy would have adjusted to school life. You look like you've lost weight. You must eat plenty tonight. Delia lowers her eyes slightly and answers softly. Yes, I will. Countess Wells looks at the sky with a slight look of regret. It's a pity. Because of duties with the knights, the others can't join us for dinner. But in their place, Delia turns, looking somewhat confused. A young man comes running down the distant steps, his footsteps hurried and light. He opens his arms and cheers. Heavens, Delia! How many years has it been? Delia's eyes widen in surprise, and she instinctively covers her mouth. She watches the young man running toward her and tentatively calls out his name. Rainer? Rainer stops in front of her with a bright smile, his sharp canines showing. Countess Wells sits at the table and asks softly, "How was your time in Anaroa, Rainer?" Rainer waves his arms excitedly. "It was fantastic, of course. Even though it's a neighboring country, the atmosphere is completely different from Acacia. It was really interesting." Countess Wells picks up her teacup and takes a sip of black tea, her tone slightly reproachful. "I told you to go to the Night Academy like your brothers, but you insisted on running off to Anaroa." Countess Wells sets down her cup and looks at her son. "Do you know how worried your father was?" Judy sits to the side, giggling behind her hand. Delia listens quietly, a gentle smile on her face. Rainer straightens his back and retorts, "I wasn't running away, Mother. I went abroad to study trade and commerce." Rainer turns to the girls. "Do you know how open Anaroa is? You wouldn't believe what happened. One time, late at night, Countess Wells rests her forehead in her hand with a sigh. Oh, this child." Rainer blinks and asks curiously, "How does it feel studying the Anaroan language?" "I heard the grammar structure. That is the same as occasion." Delia startles slightly, staring ahead. She answers thoughtfully, "It was easy at first, but it gets harder the more you learn. It's really difficult to speak naturally." Delia lets out a soft sigh. Rainer swirls the wine in his glass, tapping the rim with his finger. He suggests with a smile, "You seem very interested in Antaroa, Delia. Why don't you visit sometime? Once I reach the upper grades, I plan to find my own place there." Countess Wells picks up her cup. That's... Delia looks at her. She must be worried. Rainer waves his arms, enthusiastically extending the invitation. "Delia, do you want to find some time during the break to go?" Judy immediately cuts him off, declaring loudly, "Delia is very busy during the break. Didn't you know?" Delia lowers her eyes to the plate in front of her. "They're only this kind to me because I'm Judy's friend. If I marry into this family with my troublesome background, there will definitely be problems." Delia looks up with a polite smile. "Thank you. I'll visit with Judy after graduation." Rainer rests his chin on his hand. "Oh, really? How diligent." Countess Wells sets her cup down with a sharp clink and sighs. "You two have been together for a long time." Judy hugs Delia affectionately and sticks her tongue out playfully. "Do you have a problem with that?" Countess Wells wipes the corner of her mouth with a napkin and turns to her side. "Oh, right, Delia. If it's convenient, could you spare a minute or two before you go home? There's something I want to tell you." Delia's eyes widen, and she leans forward slightly. The manor stands in the twilight. Delia looks around, asking in confusion, "Where did Judy go?" Countess Wells looks out the window and explains softly, "I think she went with Rainer to see if the carriage has arrived." Delia clasps her hands together, somewhat anxiously. Countess, about what you want to tell me." Countess Wells stops, her expression turning hesitant. "About that." She turns around. "I'm not sure if it's appropriate for me to tell you, but it concerns your father's business." Unease flickers in Delia's eyes. "His business?" Countess Wells sighs. "Yes. The Baron came to us recently wanting to buy the development rights to an abandoned gold mine. In a memory, Bradley spreads his arms before the Countess, bragging with a fanatical, twisted smile. Countess Wells furrows her brow, her tone heavy. "But that place never produced any gold to begin with. A desolate mine, scattered rocks, a deathly silent cave, completely lifeless. What could be left in a waste mine that's already been picked clean?" Countess Wells continues with a complex expression. "I don't know if he's lying or being deceived, because he insists on buying it no matter what." Delia turns pale, a bead of cold sweat on her temple. Her breathing quickens. "Although we've sent him away for now, there are always brokers who target people like your father. Those who claim to have discovered undeveloped gold mines to raise funds and then vanish. I'm talking about scammers. We could have just sold the waste mine to whoever wanted it, but he is your father, after all. We must stop your father from getting involved with swindlers, mustn't we? Delia, I hope you could try to persuade him. I think if his daughter talks to him, he might listen. I'm sorry to involve you in these adult troubles." Delia bows her head. "Thank you, Countess. I will look into it and try to speak with him." Delia pushes open the door to her house. "If you don't have the ability, at least don't be so greedy. Or at least, don't act on those impulses. How could he make things even worse? Persuade him? How on earth am I supposed to do that?" A hand suddenly rests on the railing, the fingertips looking pale in the dim light. "Delia, you're back." Bradley walks down the stairs, his footsteps echoing in the silent corridor. Did everything go well at the Wells Manor? Delia watches the man and takes a deep breath. Father, I have something I want to talk to you about. You want to talk business? Did you hear some rumors? Bradley taps his cigar into the ashtray. Delia watches him. Are you planning to invest in a gold mine? Bradley takes a puff. Have the rumors spread that far already? Count Wells wants us to back out, so he can keep that abandoned mine for himself. He won't succeed. Bradley turns his head, exhaling a cloud of smoke with a look of contempt. He says he'll sell the waste mine at a very low price. He claims there's no profit in developing it and that he'll actually lose money. Bradley throws his head back and laughs. What a fool. He doesn't even know how to take a risk. Thanks to him, I'll be the one to get the gold mine. Father, Delia furrows her brow, her expression full of worry. I heard that many people have been scammed recently, their investments stolen by swindlers. We don't even have the money to invest in our own house. So if you could reconsider. Bradley turns his head slightly, his gaze cold. The ashtray shatters on the floor. Delia flinches, pulling her shoulders in and raising her arms to protect herself. Shards explode at her feet. Delia, Bradley's voice is low and suppressed. Are you meeting Judy Wells again tomorrow? Bradley holds his cigar, his face hidden in the shadows. Yes, father. Delia lowers her eyes, her expression pained. I am. This family is already ruined. The door is slammed shut with a heavy thud. What was the point of giving him a chance? Delia leans against the table, her hands gripping the edge tightly. I thought this would be the last time I'd help him. He's walking into the abyss on his own 2 feet. Delia flips through the documents on the desk, papers overlapping messily in her fingers. I must leave here before I'm bound. Quickly, Delia grabs a stack of heavy books, her fingertips tightening. I have to leave quickly. Found it. Delia pulls a piece of paper from a pile of documents, her hands trembling slightly as she reads the words. It's a recruitment notice for the foreign consulate. Graduates and prospective graduates of Akasys Royal Academy are eligible for extra points. Antaroa is a city of freedom and art. There, anyone can do anything. I must go abroad. Delia grips the paper tightly, to a place where my father can't track me. It's okay. All of this is fake. My life hasn't truly begun yet. I'm going to Antaroa. I'm going to live a real life in Antaroa. Even despair is a waste. Delia slaps her own cheeks hard, making a sharp sound. I must escape from here. Delia stacks the heavy books together, pressing down on them with her fingers. I must. Delia hunches over the large desk, burying herself in a mountain of materials as papers fly and swirl in the air, slowly falling to the ground. Delia walks into a second-hand bookstore, navigating the narrow aisles. Perhaps because it's a second-hand shop, it feels like there are no good books to be found. Delia runs her fingertips along the rows of old books, making a faint rustling sound. Since I'm already out, I want to buy a new Anaroan phrase book. Delia moves through the wooden shelves piled with books, clutching one to her chest, her eyes searching the high shelves. But my scholarship can't afford a newly published book. Delia lowers her eyes, her expression looking quite lonely. The foreign consulate exam for the Anaroa position that is held every November. The first round is a written diplomatic test, but the second round interview is conducted entirely in Antaroan. Since the second round accounts for 40 of the score, if the interview is botched, it doesn't matter how good the written score is. Hurried footsteps echo between the shelves, getting closer. What's the point of buying a good phrase book anyway? Delia flips through the old book in her hand and sighs. I won't have the chance to actually communicate with anyone in Antaroan anyway. Suddenly, a figure rushes in. Delia snaps her head around. Alex Davenport? She whispers his name. Shoo! Alex walks over quickly and puts a finger to his lips, signaling her to be quiet. He couldn't have gone far. Find him quickly. The boots of the guards stomp heavily on the ground as they run through the street. If we find him now and take him back to the royal city, we should still be in time. Alex stands side by side with Delia between the shelves, holding his breath as he listens to the movement outside. Damn it, why now of all times? Alex presses a hand to his forehead, looking quite anxious. It seems the young master is skipping class. Delia peeks out from behind the shelf and raises her hand as if to call out. Right here, 10 gold coins. Alex rushes forward and covers Delia's mouth, pinning her against the bookshelf. If you hide me, I'll give you 10 gold coins. Alex lets go, watching her with an urgent expression. I don't want your money. Alex suddenly grabs Delia's wrist, his grip tightening. Then, how about as a condition for me not telling anyone about what happened that day? Alex raises his other hand in a promise. I will never mention it to anyone. Delia lowers her eyes. She falls into silence. Have you told anyone? Delia looks up sharply, her face looking a bit pale as she clutches her book tightly. Not a single person. I swear to God. Alex releases her wrist and raises his palm in a vow. If I'm lying, I'll spend the rest of my life in a monastery living a celibate life. Do you think this is enough? Tilia's eyes were filled with doubt. Not before, and definitely never after. You must never mention that incident. If you lie. Tilia looked him straight in the eyes, her tone turning cold. Swear it. You will live the rest of your life like a eunuch. Tilia slightly parted her lips, spitting out those resolute words. Alex froze, gazing at the girl inches away from him, a helpless smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. Fine, y swear, Alex responded softly. You can trust me, if only to avoid breaking an oath to God. I will keep my mouth shut. Hey, have you guys checked here? A guard's inquiry came from outside the door. Let's go in and look. Heavy footsteps approached the interior of the bookstore. Tilia hid in the shadows of the bookshelf, holding her breath as she listened to the approaching movement. I have no choice. If I let him get caught, he'll definitely go around spreading the word, saying he doesn't need to keep his promise anymore. Tilia suddenly reached out and grabbed Alex's collar, pulling him toward her. She gave him a forceful turn. What are you doing? Alex's eyes widened, his pupils trembling with shock. A drop of cold sweat slid down his cheek. Didn't you ask me to hide you? Tilia tilted her head up and looked him straight in the eyes. What are you doing? You're the one who told me to hide. Alex's body was stiff as he let Tilia's hands grip his shoulders. They were pressed close together in the narrow gap. Their breaths intermingled. Tilia lowered her eyelids and fell into silence. Alex looked down at Tilia, who was inches away. He reached out and wrapped his arm around her waist. They embraced in the shadows of the bookshelves. Heavy footsteps approached from afar. Are you sure the young master came in here? The other followed closely, answering with a certain tone. Yes, there's no mistake. The guard looked around, searching anxiously between the bookshelves. He definitely came this way. Another guard appeared from around the corner, stopped abruptly, and let out a gasp. Alex held Tilia tightly in his arms, using the thick book in his hand to hide both their faces. Tilia's hands were wrapped around his waist. The two held their breath in the gap between the bookshelves. The guard ran off into the distance, reporting loudly to his companion. Captain, he doesn't seem to be here. Tilia whispered, it sounds like you weren't lying. Just in case, lower your head a bit more. Alex lowered his eyes, his gaze falling on Tilia's fair neck. What are you doing? Tilia looked up and softly called his name. Alex. He frowned slightly and asked again, I'm asking you, what are you doing? Alex looked confused, his hands frozen in midair. Tilia gripped his collar tightly. The guard's shouts came from the distance. Quiet. He can't have gone far. Search that alley again. The two stood quietly in the empty library, watching the guards. As they moved away, Tilia let go of Alex's clothes and stepped back. You kept your promise. He looked down at the book in her arms. It had a dark, textured cover. Alex gazed at her profile and broke the silence. Are you interested in Anteloan? Tilia turned around abruptly, looking somewhat surprised. Me? How did you know? Alex looked away, leaning his hand against the bookshelf behind him. I lived in Anteloa for a while when I was a child. My mother. That was from there. Tilia lowered her eyes, recalling the rumors about the Duchess of Davenport's background. I heard the Duchess was a member of royalty from somewhere. Although, I don't really care about that. Alex looked at the collection on the shelves, his fingertips sliding over the books. It seems you prefer learning through reading rather than high-level conversation. If you want to improve your speaking skills, the books here aren't enough. What you can learn from books alone is limited. Tilia fell into thought. He's right. What I need now isn't books, but practical exercise, a real conversation with someone fluent in Anteloan. She bit her lower lip. I hate Davenport, but an opportunity like this is rare. Should I try it? I have no obligation to answer you. He looked at Tilia with a confused expression. Tilia stared back at his face. Why are you looking at me like that? She lowered her head, clutching the book tightly, looking somewhat uneasy. Is my pronunciation really that bad? Alex raised a hand to cover his mouth and let out a light laugh. He doubled over laughing, his body trembling slightly. Tilia stood opposite him, her face full of anger. What? She shouted his full name. What is it, Alex Davenport? Alex laughed out loud, the sound echoing through the empty library. Alex stopped laughing and raised a hand to cover his mouth. Sorry, I just didn't expect you to say that. He walked out onto the street, his expression returning to calm. But your pronunciation is accurate, and your sentences are perfect. You're just not used to daily conversation. Tilia followed closely behind him, staring at his back with a gloomy face. Is he mocking me now? Alex stopped and turned to look at her. Need me to help you? He spread his hands, a hint of a deal in his tone. But it's not for free. You have to help me hide something. Tilia repeated, confused, hide? Alex turned to face her. You once said that if I told anyone about our business, I'd have to remain chaste for the rest of my life. But looking back, there is one person I told, my attendant once. He held out a hand, palm up. How else do you think I got the medicine for you? So, let's just let this matter pass. Alex leaned in close to Tilia's face, a playful smile on his lips. How could I live like a eunuch for the rest of my life, Tilia? Tilia let out a long sigh and walked quickly ahead. Fine, this ends here. Now, can you disappear? Alex stopped, looking somewhat confused. Disappear? Tilia calmly pointed out the fact. You've been following me this whole way. Tilia continued walking forward, her skirt swaying with her steps. Alex followed closely. Are you going to claim it's just a coincidence again? Tilia stopped abruptly and looked at the ground. But I have nowhere to go. I've been kicked out of the house. He turned around with a hint of irony. Go find those women you're entangled with. They must all be waiting for you in bed. Alex smiled faintly. Not every woman I'm entangled with actually likes me. Tilia clutched her clothes and quickened her pace. Ignore him. Ignore him. Alex looked at her back and asked softly, so where are we going? To that new bookstore by the bridge in the old district? Tilia stopped abruptly, her back stiffening as she let out a gasp. Alex looked aside. Since you came out of the secondhand bookstore empty-handed, it means they didn't have what you wanted. No, it's not because they didn't have it, but because your criteria for choosing books changed. During our conversation, you realized the problems with your speaking, didn't you? Tilia turned around abruptly and glared at him. You guy really? Alex looked at her. I'll help you. You already agreed. Tilia looked somewhat helpless. So that's why you brought up your attendant. Let's go our separate ways. Wasn't that our agreement? Alex stopped, his leather boots making a dull thud on the stone road. You've misunderstood something. He continued walking forward with his hands in his pockets. I don't have a special interest in you, just as you have no interest in me. Alex walked beside Tilia, his tone flat. That's why I'm following you. Unlike other women, you won't bother me. So, use me as you wish. Tilia looked at his back, a hint of hesitation in her eyes. Alex stood in the middle of the street and turned to look at Tilia in the distance. Don't you want to learn Antaloan properly? Your grammar is perfect, so you don't need any basic dialogue books. Alex took several thick books from the shelf and stacked them together. To learn daily conversation, you need these newly published novels. Tilia looked at the stack of books with a troubled expression. I don't need so many. I only need one. From the other side of the shelf, voices drifted over. Hey, I heard your sister is very beautiful. Tilia stopped abruptly. Really? Is she pretty? Kind? Pure? She widened her eyes and peered through the gap in the bookshelf. That voice. George reached out and pressed her shoulder. Why do you care? Are you interested in my sister? The man let out a snort. The word interested is an insult. George had a frivolous smile on his lips. Don't be like that. Don't look down on my sincere feelings, George. That bastard Ambrose. Why is he in a place like this? Beneath the bookstore is a low-level social club where all sorts of trash gather. Alex leaned in close to Tilia and lowered his voice. The bookstore is just a smokescreen to cover the filthy underworld. That's why they deliberately opened such a large shop in the old district. Don't come to a place like this alone. Madmen don't care if it's day or night. Alex put his arm around Tilia's shoulder and let her out. Let's go. Tilia stared at Alex. How does he know about such things? I can understand about George, but that madman he mentioned who doesn't care about day or night, is he referring to himself? The man's voice continued. By the way, you have another sister, right? Tilia Ambrose? Is that the name? Tilia's head snapped up, her face turning pale. Her pupils contracted in shock. Alex was incredulous. What? Tilia covered his mouth. Forget it. I even lied and said I was going to Wells Street. If I'm found out to have been here, it'll be a huge mess. The man's tone carried a hint of mockery. He's a scholarship student at the Royal Academy, right? George sneered. Scholarship my ass. He definitely cheated Gregory. Gregory walked alone in the wind, papers flying behind him. His back looked isolated and helpless. George continued. I heard he was expelled for academic misconduct. The man's tone was frivolous. How exactly did he cheat? Didn't you hear about the mess this time? George lowered his voice. You know Gregory Miles, right? The guy who used to hang out with us. George turned to look at his companion. You kid, you know nothing. It wasn't because of cheating. It was because they found books blaspheming the gods in his dorm. Tilia lowered her eyes, her face flushed, looking somewhat confused. Oh, I'm certain the book Davenport hid back then was titled, With His Hands in His Pockets. George announced loudly, anyway, the Miles family is completely finished now. There are even rumors they lobbied the Academy Dean, and they were caught possessing forbidden books. Tilia turned her head to look at Alex. Why did I suddenly remember that incident? The man asked. Doesn't the Miles family traditionally have a very close relationship with the temple? He should know how terrifying a blasphemy charge is. Why would he do such a thing? But that bastard was quite good at getting holy water. George looked away, his tone turning cold. That's enough about Miles. The man wouldn't let it go. So, is your sister pretty? George let out a light laugh. If she's pretty, do you want to trade her for your sister? George threw his head back and burst into reckless laughter. The man looked back at him. A trade sounds quite interesting too. Tilia suddenly lowered her head, her long hair covering her face, her hands tightly clenched. Madmen, bastards, and of all times, it had to be when I'm with Davenport. He must have heard everything. Alex lowered his eyes, his expression looking somewhat somber. So what if he heard? Pain and shame are just illusions. We have nothing to begin with anyway. Alex held the books. I'll take all of these. Tilia turned her head to look at the mountain of books. What on earth is Alex doing? Who asked you to buy these for me? Tilia walked quickly toward the door. If you want to play some Prince Charming game, go find another girl. Alex stopped with the heavy stack of books. No white horse, and I don't plan on being a prince. And who said this was free? Tilia sat on the sofa, scooping up a small piece of ice cream with a spoon. Because you bought the books, you want me to eat ice cream with you? Alex took a bite of the dessert and looked at Tilia across from him. I used to come here often with my ex, but after we broke up, I haven't been able to step foot in here once. Tilia was speechless. You could have perfectly well come alone. Alex spoke, ordering ice cream alone in a place like this. How could I possibly do that? You're a woman, so you wouldn't understand. I'd rather die. Tilia looked at him expressionlessly. Then go die. Alex gave a start, a look of horror appearing on his face. Were you just thinking then go die? Tilia picked up the spoon and took a bite of ice cream. Perceptive bastard. Tilia held the silver spoon in her mouth, feeling the sweetness spread over her tongue. A faint blush rose to her cheeks. Maybe it's because it's so expensive, but this taste is indeed wonderful. Alex watched Tilia as she finished the bowl of dessert in front of her. You're already done. I'm going to order another. What about you? Alex stood up and reached out to pull aside the white lace curtain at his side. What flavor do you like? Tilia lowered her eyes and responded softly, strawberry. Alex turned and walked quickly toward the counter. Got it. Alex whispered the word to himself. Strawberry. The shopkeeper leaned over the counter and looked at the approaching Alex. No, young master, if you just call for me from your seat, that I would come immediately. Alex stood at the counter and looked down at the menu. 1 strawberry, 1 vanilla. Alex pointed to the menu and added, for the strawberry one, add toppings. The shopkeeper rubbed his hands, his face full of a flattering smile. For the vanilla one, I'll add toppings for you for free as well. Alex frowned slightly. To have you close the shop for a few hours, I've already deducted several months of rent. This much is only right. Captain of the guard. Dot rushed into the shop. Young master, so you were here? You've been willful enough. Please, you must leave with us now. Alex turned around and calmly told the shopkeeper, for the vanilla one, don't add toppings, and reduced the portion to the minimum. The captain of the guard followed closely behind Alex, his expression anxious. Young master, Alex let out a helpless sigh. I know. Let me finish this ice cream, and I'll go with you quietly. So don't make a scene here. The captain of the guard looked incredulous. Ice cream? Young master, you don't like sweets at all. Alex lowered his eyes and looked at the table. This? Alex reached out and tapped his fingertip lightly on the menu on the table. Today is just one of those days. The kind of day where I want to eat sweets until my head hurts. Tilia sat alone in the window's seat, her head resting on one hand, staring at the greenery outside. Tilia turned her head toward the window. Why isn't he back yet? Sunlight filtered through the lush leaves, casting scattered spots of light. A breeze brushed past, and the leaves swayed gently in the light and shadow, flickering with ripples of brightness. Gregory furrowed his brows. This isn't fair. Father, you actually said it was blasphemy. Gregory suddenly clutched the lapel of his shirt, his body trembling with anger. I'm also the eldest son of the Earl of Miles. How could I do something that brings shame upon the family? This is all a setup. Someone damaged the statue of the Virgin and hid it in my room. Earl Miles stood with his back to his eldest son, hands folded behind him, silently staring at the painting on the wall. Gregory grit his teeth. As long as the real culprit is caught. Earl Miles' expression was cold. Whether you were framed or not doesn't matter anymore. The dean has betrayed us. To cover up his own corruption, he expelled you and even personally reported you to the temple. Gregory bowed his head weakly, his voice trembling. Father. Earl Miles turned around, disgust in his eyes. I shouldn't have spent money to send a fool like you. To the academy. If you still care about the family honor, go and turn yourself in quietly. Earl Miles stopped. That is my final piece of advice. Earl Miles pushed open the door and walked toward the brightly lit corridor. That was the final suggestion. Gregory knelt by the bookshelf, screaming at the departing back. Father, father. Gregory suddenly clenched his fist and cursed through gritted teeth. Damn it, I said it really wasn't me. Gregory's eyes widened, and he roared with a distorted expression. Why on earth would I attack that woman just because of a statue of the Virgin? Why would I do that, Tilia Ambrose? Gregory's gaze was dark. That's right, that bitch found out I used holy water. You crazy woman, you ruined me just for a prank. You just wait. Do you really think I'll go to hell alone like this? In the end, I even got a book. And free ice cream. Tilia walked up the steps, her skirt swaying slightly with her movements. I think I should at least thank him. Thanks to him, that I feel much better now. Tilia pushed open the door, holding the heavy books in her arms. You're finally back. George had one hand behind his head, casually flipping through letters. Why are you in my room? George changed his posture, a playful smile on his lips. I was too bored, so I stopped by, and I found some. Very interesting things. Tilia stopped, her gaze falling on the papers scattered all over the floor. The external console position in Antiloa. Tilia's body froze, her eyes fixed on the floor. George let out a sneer. Do you really think with your brain you can go to a place like that? When will you wake up, Tilia? What men hate most are women like you who pretend to work hard, but are actually flighty. George stood up, his leather shoes thudding on the wooden floor. I'm thinking of showing this to Father. What do you think? You have no gratitude for everything Father has done for you, and you even dare to try and flee overseas. Should I let you off this time? You should know my friend, Brad Reynolds, right? He really wants to see you. Go and meet him. Tilia turned around. Why should I do that? George questioned loudly. Are you even listening to me? He's from the family of the Earl of Reynolds. This is a huge opportunity for you. Becoming the daughter-in-law of an Earl's family is far better than being some insignificant Antiloan consul. Tilia lowered her eyes, a mocking curve appearing on her lips. Tilia's gaze was cold. I was wondering what nonsense you were spewing. What makes you think I'm applying for a consul position? Are you daydreaming all by yourself? George froze, his expression bewildered. What did you say? Tilia pressed closer. You saw one lousy notice sent by the school and started having delusions. Have you been this bored lately? George pointed at the books in her arms, his voice trembling. What? What about those books? Those are all Antiloan art books. Tilia raised a hand to her forehead, her hair falling. She let out a long sigh. Don't you even know that a second foreign language is a graduation requirement for the academy? Tilia lowered her hand, her gaze becoming sharp. It seems I'll have to go talk to Father personally. George grit his teeth, his face pale. Tilia. She leaned close to his face, her voice low and dangerous. I'll tell him you've fallen into strange delusions and even try to pair me off with some worthless man. George backed away, incoherent. That's not. Tilia stared at the man in front of her. You've definitely already promised he could see me, haven't you? That's why you searched my room. They're trying to get some leverage on me. Tilia leaned close to his ear. If Father finds out I'm entangled with a man before graduation, no matter who recommended him, you're dead. You should know that very well, right? George's whole body was stiff, his pupils trembling. Igriegagis. Tilia straightened up, her tone returning to flat. All right, I'll handle this quietly for you. So you'd better keep the situation under control and don't let any rumor spread. Tilia suddenly snatched the paper from his hand. Her movement was crisp and decisive. George looked relieved and clenched his fists. Thank you so much, Tilia. Tilia turned her back and walked toward the bookshelf. Idiot. Tilia slapped a thick stack of documents onto the desk with a heavy thud. Since I've gone this far, he has no reason to suspect any further. But what should I do about that Brad guy? Although it sounds a bit strange, Brad is actually a decent person, George. That continued to persuade her. If you meet him once, you definitely won't regret it. Tilia turned her head, deep disgust and fatigue in her eyes. A A few days later, at a secret social club, a waitress walked in carrying a tray and opened her mouth slightly. "Excuse me." The waitress bent down and placed the teapot and teacup gently on the table. "The Earl Grey is here." Brad sat at the round table and gave a low response. The waitress turned around, her high heels clicking on the floor as she walked away. Brad stared at the teacup in front of him, his eyes dark. That bastard George actually gave up his own sister. Brad let out a cold snort. "How could I ever introduce my precious sister to someone like you? Do you think I'm crazy? Idiot." Brad took a small bottle from his pocket and slowly poured holy water into the teacup. The liquid merged with the black tea, creating subtle ripples. A light knock came from outside the door. "Excuse me." Brad turned his head abruptly to look at the closed door. "May I come in?" Brad walked quickly toward the door, his face full of a fawning smile. "Of course, please come in." The door was slowly pushed open with a soft sound. Brad stood up, his face instantly switching to a welcoming expression as he bowed slightly. "It is truly an honor to meet you, Miss Tilia Ambrose." "I am Brad." Tilia bowed her head slightly, an elegant smile on her lips. "I have heard much about you, Mr. Brad Reynolds." Brad's eyes widened, his pupils shrinking in shock. A blush rose to his cheeks, and his entire person froze in place. Tilia held the wide brim of her hat with one hand, her long hair falling over her shoulders and her skirt spreading out in the light and shadow. Brad sat at the round table, picked up his teacup, and watched the woman across from him. "Wow, this is truly something. You're much more beautiful than George said." Brad moved a bit closer, an excited smile on his face. "The moment you walked in, I was truly stunned." Tilia sat upright and lowered her eyes. "I'm also surprised. I didn't expect you to be even stupider than I imagined." And Tilia turned her head, thinking silently. Brad picked up the teacup. "Do you like Earl Grey? I brought some particularly good tea. Let's talk while we drink." Damn it. I've really hit the jackpot." Brad stared at her, unable to stop the corners of his mouth from turning up, just thinking about spending a wonderful night with a woman like this. "Thank goodness I mixed the holy water into the tea beforehand." Tilia dropped her handkerchief onto the floor. "Oh," Tilia whispered, "my handkerchief." Brad quickly reached out and pressed down on the silk item on the table. "Let me get it for you." Tilia slightly raised her eyes and looked ahead. Brad picked up the handkerchief and handed it over, his face full of smiles. "Seriously, she's impossibly beautiful." Tilia said softly, "Thank you." Brad picked up his teacup and took a sip of the black tea. "It's such a pity to only spend one night. Even if she's not my wife, she'd be perfect as a mistress." Tilia held her teacup and smelled the rising steam. "The fragrance, that is truly enchanting." Brad let out a hearty laugh. "Is that so? I'm glad to hear you say that." Tilia closed her eyes and brought the teacup to her lips. She tilted her head back and drank it. "When will the medicine take effect?" Brad stared intently at her. "I used a high-concentration extract. Once she drinks it, it should be immediate." Brad's eyes suddenly widened, his pupils trembling violently, his expression becoming distorted. And terrified, Brad suddenly collapsed onto the table with a dull thud. Tilia put down her teacup and calmly watched the fallen man. "Just as I thought." Tea spilled down, soaking into Brad's hair and face. "To be honest, men are all the same. Their heads that are only filled with that one thing." Tilia tilted the teacup and watched the man lying there in a mess. "Did you really think I'd fallen as such a stupid trap? Idiot. Anyway, there's nothing left to do here." Tilia stood up and looked down at the remains on the round table. "As long as I can get home without father finding out." Tilia put on her hat and lowered the brim. She pushed open the heavy door and was about to leave when the sound of entanglement came from the corridor. Tilia stopped and reached up to hold her hat, looking ahead. A man was pinning a woman against the wall, the two of them kissing passionately. Tilia froze and let out a gasp. The woman made a muffled sound. Tilia watched the pair. "That's strange. I clearly remember coming in from this way." Tilia walked through the long corridor, her hands tightly covering her cheeks, quickening her pace to try and avoid the debauched men and women around her. A hand suddenly reached out from behind and firmly gripped her shoulder. Tilia turned her head in fear. "So you were here? It's you." Tilia froze in place, staring at the man in front of her. Alex stood by the steps, looking down at her. "You, Alex Davenport." Tilia's eyes widened as she called his name in disbelief. Alex suddenly moved closer and reached out to cover her mouth. "Do you come to places like this too?" Tilia whispered, looking somewhat confused. Alex's expression was grave as he looked into her eyes. Of course not. I was looking for you. Looking for me? How did he know I was here? Alex took Tilia's hand and walked quickly through the noisy corridor. Let's get out of here first. I'll explain on the way. Tilia came to a sudden halt and shook off his hand. Wait, why should I trust you and go with you? You seem very familiar with the layout here. If we just walk into a room like this. Alex interrupted her by grabbing her wrist again. It's not like that, Tilia pressed. Then what is it for? Is it because of the night we spent together? Do you hate the way I'm treating you? Tilia lowered her head, avoiding his gaze, and tightly gripped the collar of her dress. Alex remained silent for a moment, watching her with a solemn expression. Tilia, Gregory escaped. He was supposed to stand trial, but he fled. Tilia froze in place, her voice faint. What? Alex looked around, his tone growing more urgent. That's why we have to leave this place immediately. That bastard Brad Reynolds intentionally spread rumors that you would be appearing here tonight. Alex turned his head, his expression tense. Gregory might have already discovered your location. Alex pulled Tilia by the wrist, leading her quickly through the corridor. I just want to take you somewhere safe before he finds you. That is all. He believes the reason he fell to this point is entirely because of you. Alex stopped, his back to the light and shadow, even though he's just looking for someone convenient to take his anger out on. Tilia opened her mouth slightly, staring at the man's back. How? Do you know all this? Alex continued walking, his leather shoes making a dull thud on the wooden floor. I've been tracking Gregory's movements, just in case. Tilia stopped in her tracks, letting her skirt flare out behind her. Why would you go to such lengths for me? You didn't need to go this far. Tilia looked up at Alex's profile. Memories flashed through her mind. Alex taking a heavy stack of books from her in the library, his expression focused and calm. Tilia sitting at the dining table with a dessert spoon, a faint blush on her face. Why do you keep doing all this for me? Alex stopped and whispered her name. Tilia Ambrose. Alex was about to speak when he was cut off by a sudden, strange noise. Tilia whipped her head around toward the end of the corridor. Alex also became alert. Tilia Ambrose. A violent roar exploded from the end of the long hall. Gregory, draped in a dark cloak, charged toward them like a madman. Gregory held a sharp dagger high, the blade glinting in the dim light. You damn bitch. Alex quickly stepped sideways, shielding Tilia behind him. Alex. Tilia screamed in terror. Gregory lunged with the knife, but Alex raised his arm and firmly blocked the man's descending wrist. Alex gritted his teeth and exerted force, pushing Gregory back. Gregory, deterred by the immense strength, let out a pained howl from his throat. The dagger flew out of his hand and landed heavily on the carpet. Gregory collapsed to the ground, looking up in terror. Alex, Davenport. Tilia curled up in the corner, her hands clutching her collar tightly. She panted heavily as she witnessed the violent scene before her. Alex leaned down and grabbed Gregory by the collar. You still have the strength for these tricks? It seems the charge of blasphemy wasn't heavy enough for you. Gregory, his face covered in blood, struggled to squeeze out broken words. So, you're the one behind all of this? Alex leaned close to his ear, his lips curling into a cold arc. I will make sure you never get near Tilia Ambrose again. If I cut off your hands and tongue before handing you over to the paladins, it would be quite a sight, wouldn't it? Gregory's eyes widened in horror, his teeth chattering violently. This bastard was insane too. He was completely obsessed with Tilia Ambrose. Tilia leaned against the door, her body trembling uncontrollably. Tilia, you and your dirty husband, you certainly know how to use men. Tilia closed her eyes and gave a sorrowful smile. I would rather die than sleep with you. Gregory let out a hysterical roar. You total slut. If you hadn't done that to me back then, you deserve to die. Gregory was pinned to the ground by Alex, his voice trembling with extreme rage. Alex looked down at him and let out a cold snort. What did you say? I won't die alone. Gregory's eyes snapped open with a manic look. He pulled a small glass vial from his tunic and flicked the cap open with his thumb, his movements lightning fast. Sensing something wrong, Alex spun around to look at Tilia in the distance. Tilia was huddled at the end of the corridor, watching in horror. Gregory let out a strange cry and hurled the vial hard against the floor. The sound of breaking glass was sharp and piercing. The transparent liquid splashed into the air, instantly turning into a cloud of eerie white smoke. Alex's roar was swallowed by the darkness. No, Tilia. A heavy fist slammed down, knuckles stained with blood. Dull impacts echoed repeatedly. Alex leaned over, swinging his fists, his face flecked with blood and his eyes filled with madness. Tilia's eyes widened, her pupils trembling with fear as cold sweat slid down her cheek. "Father!" Tilia rushed into the room, clinging to the man's leg, pleading, "Please, just look at me once. Mother is dying, father." Tilia curled up on the thick carpet, her arms wrapped tightly around her trembling shoulders, whispering, "Please don't kill him. I'm so scared, father." Tilia's tears burst forth, her voice fractured. "I beg of you." Tilia cried out at the top of her lungs, tears streaming down as her throat let out broken gasps. Alex stopped his movements and looked down at her, his voice hoarse. Hesitating, he called Tilia. The glass vial smashed against the ground, shattering instantly. Liquid sprayed out with a crisp cracking sound. Alex suddenly reached out, his fingers splayed, lunging forward as he screamed, "Tilia!" Alex leaned forward, his expression one of terrified desperation. "Get away!" A glowing glass bottle sailed through the air, falling into the gloom. Tilia fell to the ground, fearfully raising her arm to shield herself, tears at the corners of her eyes. Thick smoke rose and spread rapidly. Tilia propped herself up on the floor, coughing violently. She covered her nose and mouth, her brow furrowed and her eyes full of pain. "It hurts. I have to run quickly." Alex suddenly yanked open his collar and warned her urgently, "Don't breathe." Alex reminded her in a low voice, "Cover your mouth. You can't inhale too much." Alex frowned, enduring the stinging pain. "High concentration holy water? It seems he wanted us to breathe it in and die." The man lay on the ground, motionless. Alex gritted his teeth and cursed under his breath. "Damn bastard," annoying to the very end. Tilia's body trembled slightly. Alex let go of her and looked around. "Let's leave here first." Alex took Tilia's hand, and the two of them hurried back, her skirt sweeping across the floor. Tilia turned her head for one last look at the scene behind her before Alex led her running deep into the corridor. Their footsteps echoed in the empty hallway as their figures gradually receded, leaving only the fallen body at the end of the hall. The buildings stood tall under the sunlight, their roofs staggered in an orderly fashion. The door was slammed open against the wall with a loud bang. Alex supported Tilia's shoulder, softly comforting her. "Take it slow. Deep breaths." Tilia, draped in a large dark coat, held a handkerchief tightly over her nose and mouth, coughing repeatedly. Alex looked down at her face. "It's all right now. The carriage will be here soon. You take it and leave." Tilia looked up, her gaze falling on Alex's hand, and she let out a startled cry. Tilia grabbed his arm, her expression anxious. "Alex, your body is burning up." Alex was covered in sweat, his breathing heavy and his eyes appearing somewhat glazed. Tilia stared at him, her voice trembling. "You inhaled that holy water too, didn't you? That's why you're like this." Alex raised a hand to his forehead, trying to stay conscious as he gasped for air. Tilia questioned him loudly. "Why did you do that? You should have worried about yourself first." Alex avoided her gaze. "I once trained to be a paladin. Back then, I underwent training. I have a resistance to holy water. This amount is fine." Alex lowered his arm, his fingertips trembling slightly. Tilia pulled a small medicine bottle from her person and held it out to him. "Take this. It's an antidote just in case. Drink it quickly." Alex's face was drenched in sweat, his heavy eyelids drooping as he let out a weak breath. Alex took the bottle, tilted his head back, and swallowed the medicine, his atoms apple bobbing. Tilia stood by, watching him with a solemn expression. Alex casually tossed the empty bottle to the ground, where it shattered against the stone bricks. As the shards scattered, Tilia pursed her lips, a complex emotion in her eyes. They fell into silence. The sound of hooves approached from a distance as a carriage sped toward them. The driver pulled the reins and shouted anxiously, "Young master. Young master, are you all right?" Alex's face was flushed as he leaned unsteadily against the wall. He urged her in a hoarse voice, "Get in. I'll take the next carriage." Tilia turned to ask the driver, "When will the next one arrive?" The driver wiped his sweat. "It should be soon. 20 minutes at the latest." Tilia grabbed Alex's arm and forced him toward the carriage. "Get in this one with me. Even if you're going to faint, it's better to do it inside the carriage." Tilia gripped Alex's clothes, her voice trembling with urgency. "Do you know how dangerous it is to stay here after being exposed to holy water? Don't think you're safe just because you're a man." Alex ran his fingers through his hair, brushing it back. Despite his unnatural flush, a faint smile tugged at his lips. "Don't worry. I'm confident I can handle what comes next." Tilia stared at him in disbelief. You, even a time like this. Alex suddenly whispered her name. Tilia. He reached out, his fingertips lightly touching her cheek, his thumb brushing her skin. Enough. Go now. Alex leaned down, resting his forehead against Tilia's shoulder, his breath hot and heavy. Right now, you shouldn't be helping me. You should be staying away from me. Tilia froze, her pupils contracting as she stared at the man so close to her. A long silence followed. Hooves splashed through a puddle, kicking up mud as the carriage sped down the street. Tilia huddled on the wide seat, one hand supporting her forehead. As the carriage jolted violently, Tilia clenched her fists, her nails digging into her palms. That's right. Who on earth am I worrying about? Tilia closed her eyes, and a man's figure appeared in her mind. Alex Davenport, that bastard. In her mind, Alex had his back to her, struggling to put on his coat with slow, heavy movements. His large hand rested on her head as he whispered, "It's all right now." Tilia snapped her eyes open. That bastard. Alex was standing in the empty hall, face dripping with sweat, his eyes betraying an undeniable exhaustion, his lips slightly parted. He panted for breath. Tilia watched the scenery flash past the window, her gaze gradually becoming distant. The setting sun bathed the streets, buildings casting long shadows. Alex slumped against a stone wall, his back pressed against the cold bricks as he gasped for air. Sweat slid down his cheeks, soaking his shirt collar. He gritted his teeth and cursed softly. Damn it. Alex lowered his head, pressing his hands hard against his temples, his fingertips trembling from the pressure. My head. The street was empty except for a few distant pedestrians hurrying along. Suddenly, the sound of hooves shattered the silence, approaching rapidly. Tilia pulled back the curtain and shouted out the window, "Alex." The carriage screeched to a halt at the roadside. The wheels ground against the pavement. Tilia pushed open the door and jumped down, lifting her skirt. Alex. Alex struggled to look up, his pupils shrinking in surprise as he watched the figure running toward him. What? Tilia stood by the carriage step, reaching out to him with a determined yet anxious look. Getting quickly, Alex leaned against the wall, looking up at her in a daze. Tilia leaned down and extended her hand, her voice sharp and decisive. "This isn't for you. This is for myself." Alex pressed his forehead hard, sweat seeping through his fingers. He gritted his teeth and let out a low growl. "I never intended to let you off so easily." Alex suddenly recoiled, raising a hand to cover his nose and mouth, his body trembling uncontrollably. He stared ahead in fear. Tilia lowered her eyes, looking somewhat confused. Alex panted, sweat on his brow, his voice trembling. "If I hadn't followed you." Tilia pursed her lips and looked away. "I thought I finally protected you, kept you away from Gregory." Alex clutched his forehead, sweat dripping, and away from myself. Alex's eyes were bloodshot as he gasped for air. Tilia leaned down and gripped his arms tightly. Alex, are you all right?" Alex's eyes snapped open, his pupils shrinking in terror. Cold sweat slid down his face. "Tilia." She held his shoulders, her voice urgent. "Don't move yet. Don't try to stand up." Alex's body swayed violently as he suddenly shook off Tilia's hands and stumbled backward. He fell heavily to the ground, propping himself up with one hand as he breathed hard. Tilia cried out, "Alex." Alex hung his head. "If I knelt before you like this and started kissing you from your toes upward." Tilia froze, her face flushing as she stared at him in shock. Alex leaned down, burying his face against Tilia's knees. "What kind of expression would you make?" Alex pressed close to her knees, his face red and his hair slightly disheveled. Tilia whispered, "Alex." Alex propped himself up with one hand, his fingertips digging into the ground, his body trembling slightly. Tilia suddenly cried out, "Alex." She looked down at him, her expression one of surprise and confusion. "Why can't you stand up? Are you hurt?" Alex's eyes widened, cold sweat dripping down his face as he looked confused. Alex clenched his fist and pressed it against the ground. "I'm fine." Tilia lowered her eyes, watching the young man. "You don't look fine at all." Alex looked up, a playful smirk on his lips. "If I'm really not fine, what do you plan to do?" Alex watched Tilia, his face flushed. "Do you plan to give me an injection? Please. You can't do it. When I tell you to go, just go home." Alex looked up, his face red, a playful smile on his lips. "You couldn't even handle being with me when I hadn't taken a medicine. Do you think you can handle me now?" Tilia grabbed Alex's hand. "I'm not going home." Alex's eyes widened, his expression filled with anger and frustration. "This carriage is going to your house. Tilia Ambrose. Tilia closed her eyes, letting Alex's hand caress her face. I was attacked from such a close distance. Do you really think I didn't inhale any? Alex gripped Tilia's hand tightly, his fingertips digging into her palm as he led her quickly down the long hallway. Their footsteps echoed in the empty corridor. A maid standing in the distance hurriedly lowered her head. Young master. Alex didn't look back, dragging Tilia along as they continued upstairs. The maid asked cautiously which guest room should be prepared for the lady. Alex stopped abruptly, one hand gripping the stair railing tightly. No need. Alex turned his face, his expression flushed but his eyes cold and unyielding. Until I call for you. No one is allowed on the second floor. The maid bowed deeply. Understood. Tilia let him pull her along, her gaze fixed on Alex's back, her expression confused. Is this really right? Tilia lowered her eyes, her hair slightly messy. I even lied about inhaling the holy water. Alex said nothing, dragging her to the far end of the second floor, their footsteps echoing on the quiet stairs. If I hadn't appeared, were you planning to endure all this alone until the end? The door slowly closed behind them with a soft friction sound. The room fell into silence. Alex looked at the girl standing across from him. Why are you so far away? Are you afraid? Alex unbuttoned the top of his shirt, revealing his collarbone and chest. His face was flushed, and his eyes held a sense of urgency. Tilia lowered her eyes, her hands clutching the hem of her clothes. It's not because I'm afraid. I just don't want to owe Alex Davenport anything. That's all. Alex suddenly stepped forward and cupped Tilia's face, forcing her to look up. Tilia froze, feeling the warmth of his palm. That was indeed the only reason. Alex leaned down until their noses were almost touching, their breaths intermingling in the narrow space. But my body, it's just like that time. Alex placed his hands on Tilia's shoulders and fell into a long silence. Alex let go and turned toward the back of the room, his footsteps echoing in the quiet. Tilia watched his back and whispered Alex. Alex picked up a lantern and held it out to her. Take this. If I start acting like a madman, use this to hit me over the head. Tilia's eyes widened in alarm. What are you talking about? Alex's face was flushed, sweat sliding down his cheek. You should understand what I mean. You can run away at any time. Tilia held her breath, watching the weakened young man. Did I inhale the holy water too? Tilia raised her hand, her fingers trembling slightly. She had come here just to help Alex. Tilia gently cupped Alex's face, looking into his bloodshot eyes. Alex felt the warmth on his cheeks, and his breathing grew even more rapid. His face was red. My body feels so strange. The lantern slipped from her fingers and hit the floor with a dull thud. I don't want to run away. Tilia tilted her face up, their noses touching, her breath becoming quick and hot. All of this is because of the holy water. Alex pulled Tilia into a tight embrace, his arms encircling her waist. He panted heavily, repeatedly kissing the side of her neck. Tilia tilted her head back slightly, her hands pressed against Alex's shoulders as she murmured intermittently, Alex, wait. Alex's movements became more frantic. Tilia's breathing grew disordered. I can't breathe. Alex stopped, his voice hoarse. Okay, I understand. Tilia quickly shook her head. No, it's not like that. Alex suddenly exerted force and lifted Tilia, holding her close to his chest. Tilia's eyes were glazed, her cheeks flushed a deep red. Alex rested his head on her shoulder, his voice trembling faintly. Before that, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have treated you so poorly. I was just jealous, that's why. I'll do better in the future, so... Tilia's eyes snapped open as she stared into the eyes right in front of her. Alex gazed at her with a look of longing. From now on, only do it with me, okay? Tilia, somewhat lost, asked in a low voice, what are you even talking about? Alex buried his face in the crook of her neck, his hair brushing against her face, his voice low and stubborn. Only be with me. Tilia let out a short gasp, her body rising and falling with his movements. She hurriedly replied, okay. Tilia, face flushed and breathing hard, asked back, okay then. Tilia softly gave her promise. Yes, I will only be with you too. Alex lowered his head again and kissed her forehead. Tilia closed her eyes, feeling the weight of the moment. From now on, until forever. Why? Alex softly called her name. Tilia. Tilia looked at the man with a confused expression. Why are you looking at me like that? It's always like this at times like this. Alex gazed at her, his eyes overflowing with deep affection. I love you, Tilia. Alex, shirtless, gripped Tilia's shoulders and pinned her against the wall, his breathing growing even more rapid. Alex leaned down and kissed Tilia's lips forcefully. Tilia tilted her face up, accepting the sudden kiss, her hands weakly, not clinging to his back. Tilia parted her lips slightly, panting for breath. Stop talking nonsense and hurry. Alex leaned down, burying his head in the crook of Tilia's neck, his arms locked tightly around her body. Alex stopped and lowered his eyes, his expression appearing somewhat lonely. He turned his head, feeling the touch of Tilia's fingertips, a hint of struggle in his gaze. Alex leaned in again, whispering in Tilia's ear. Tilia closed her eyes and let him take her into his arms. Do as you please. As I thought, back then, when I had the chance, I should have used that to smash his head. Tilia curled up in the middle of the large bed, wrapped tightly in the duvet. Her hair was scattered messily across the pillow, and her eyes held a hint of regret. That bastard. He leaves someone in this state, and then just walks away looking perfectly relaxed. Tilia propped herself up, her long hair sliding over her shoulders. The more she thought about it, the angrier she got. Never mind. Tilia stepped onto the floor barefoot, put on her dark shoes, and walked toward the closed door. Are you awake? We're here to help you dress. Two maids pushed open the door and entered the room, carrying neatly folded clothes. Tilia turned back in a panic, reflexively clutching her collar. I'm Fine. Just leave them there. The maids gave polite smiles and walked straight toward the bed. There's no need to refuse. We're used to taking care of ladies like you. Tilia sat on the edge of the bed and lowered her head, falling into a long silence. My name is Tilia Ambrose. Alex and I attended the same academy. We were in the same graduating class. The maid smiled and tilted her head slightly. So that's how it is. The maids surrounded Tilia, pulling at her nightgown to help her change. Tilia resisted slightly. I'm not the kind of woman you think I am. I'm not a prostitute, nor a mistress. It seems we're done talking. I can handle the rest myself. Please leave. Tilia bent over and began putting on the complex skirt herself. The maid stood behind her, looking somewhat uneasy. We didn't mean it that way. Tilia, with her back to the door, reached back to pull up the zipper. Suddenly, hurried footsteps came from outside. The door was flung open. Alex appeared in the doorway, and the maid scrambled aside in alarm. Alex was panting, his collar slightly open. Behind him followed a doctor carrying a medical bag. Did something happen? Alex walked quickly toward Tilia. Why are you leaving? Didn't you just say you were hurt? Alex reached out, wanting to grab Tilia's shoulder, but Tilia kept walking forward without looking back. Forget it. Alex blocked Tilia's path, looking down at her feet, his tone firm. Get treated first. After that, eat before you go. The dining room is already prepared. Tilia's lips curled into a sneer. Is this part of the service too? Calling a doctor after sleeping together and then serving a meal? Is this your routine for the women you bring home? Alex froze, looking bewildered. For a moment, he was speechless. The two maids stood in the back, shrinking their shoulders in fear. Alex watched Tilia in silence, the atmosphere becoming deathly still. Alex raised a hand to his forehead and let out a helpless sigh. Fine, this is the routine. So eat before you leave. Tilia's eyes were icy. I don't need your kindness. Move, Alex. Alex firmly gripped Tilia's wrist. Tilia struggled hard, trying to break free. I said I'm fine. Alex's tone became a bit more persistent. It's rare for a guest to come. The chef has gone all out. If you don't go, all that food will have to be thrown away. It will be a tragedy. Tilia retorted with disgust. What does that have to do with me? Alex lowered his voice. You also need to take a contraceptive pill, Tilia. You should know very well what we did last night. Tilia stood before the ornate doorway, her body trembling slightly. She ground out the words through gritted teeth. You really are the worst kind of bastard. Alex gave instructions to the waiting doctor. Prepare the treatment. The doctor, carrying the heavy bag, hurried into the room. Tilia watched this, her heart full of regret. I knew it. I knew I shouldn't have helped someone like him. The carriage sped along the bumpy road, wheels rattling over the crossroads. Tilia sat inside, closing her eyes in exhaustion as the carriage swayed, treating others however he pleases. Tilia, that had eventually accepted the medical treatment, lying on the soft bed while they tended to the wound on her back. Tilia leaned against the carriage wall, looking down at the package in her hand, her expression puzzled. Why'd he even give me this? As long as there's medicine, it's enough. Delia's fingertips brushed over the ribbon on the package. She fell in a deep thought. Was this also part of the so-called custom? Alex handed over an exquisite gift box, his tone flat. Take it. Don't you like this? Alex stood in the light and shadow, holding the original box with a rare bow, his expression blurred. Delia sat in the bumping carriage, turning her head to gaze at the scenery receding rapidly outside the window. Her hands tightly held that gift box as the carriage axles made a rhythmic sound, passing through dense forest paths, driving toward the distant manor. Delia leaned against the carriage cushions, staring blankly into the void. Suddenly, a crisp knocking sound came from outside the window. Delia's eyes snapped open as she let out a gasp. Oh no! Delia sat up in a panic, hiding the gift box behind her, her expression extremely uneasy. I was wondering why a strange carriage was following us all the way to the front door. A head poked through the carriage window. My daughter, are you finally willing to come home? Delia froze in her seat, her face instantly turning pale. The snack box was roughly overturned, sweets scattering across the floor. Bradley let out a roar of anger. How dare you be so insolent? Bradley suddenly grabbed Delia's long hair and pressed her entire body against the table. You filthy woman, you don't deserve to eat these things. Delia, that was forced to lift her head, enduring the sharp pain from her scalp. Bradley leaned into her ear. On your wedding night, how do you plan to explain yourself to your husband? Huh? How are you going to tell the man who bought you that you're such a vulgar thing? Delia closed her eyes, letting tears well up in them. Don't think about anything. If I think too much, I'll feel wronged. If I feel wronged, it will only make me more miserable. This is all just a nightmare. Bradley opened his mouth and let out a silent roar, his face fragmented in distortion. Of course, that isn't my real life either. Delia lowered her gaze, a slight curve actually forming at the corner of her mouth. She sneered silently. Bradley suddenly turned his head, staring at her in disbelief. You're laughing? Bradley grabbed Delia's long hair and yanked her head back violently. This bitch must die today. Only then will she wake up. The door was suddenly pushed open. A male servant rushed into the room with a panicked expression, shouting, Baron, come look at this. Brad. Dudley turned his head sharply, eyes widening as he looked outside. That is something from the Duke of Davenport's territory. The carved gates were closed, but the front was piled with blooming bouquets shimmering in the light. This is... Bradley walked quickly to the door, looking at the flowers all over the ground. What on earth is going on? The servant held a bamboo basket filled with flowers and replied in a low voice. These were all sent from the Duke of Davenport's territory. Bradley frowned deeply. Why would the Duke's territory send things to our house? The servant pulled a card from the flower basket and examined the handwriting on it. According to what's written here, to Miss Delia, these were sent by the Duke's second son, Lord Alex Davenport. Delia slumped on the carpet, her long hair covering most of her face, her body trembling slightly. Bradley stared straight ahead, his eyes twitching with anger. Impossible. Then Bradley spread his arms at the door, a twisted and excited smile on his face. My daughter, you should have told me sooner that you were with the young master of the Davenport family. Delia walked quickly down the hallway, her high heels making a dull thud on the carpet. She walked forward without looking back. George, Dot chased after her from behind, reaching out to grab Delia's arm. Hey, Delia, did the Davenport young master really send you a gift? Delia forcefully shook off his hand and continued walking. Mind your own business. George followed close by her side, tilting his head to lean into her face. Besides your brother, who else would care about you this much? Don't be like this. Come on, tell me. Did you really sleep with the son of the Davenport family? What about Brad? Weren't you seeing him all the time? I still can't get in touch with him. Delia stopped and let out a contemptuous sigh. Even if I'm willing to keep my mouth shut, there's a limit. Delia turned her face slightly, a hint of coldness in her eyes. Do you know? Brad Reynolds intended to use holy water on me that day. George's body suddenly stiffened, a layer of cold sweat breaking out on his forehead. Oh, holy water? What kind of girl would say such a word? Delia turned her head and stared straight into George's eyes. If you continue to harass me like this, I might spill everything you've ever done. A mocking curve formed at the corner of Delia's mouth. You're so eager to sell me off and make a fortune. But what would happen if people found out what almost happened to me that day? George clenched his fists, his expression appearing panicked and flustered. I'm doing all this for your own good. Delia's voice was cold, without a trace of warmth. Then stop meddling in my affairs. Delia started walking again, heading deep into the hallway without looking back. Unless you want to lose your last penny for wine, then go ahead and keep being nosy. George stood where he was, muttering in a low voice. You even managed to hook up with the Davenport young master because of it. Delia stopped abruptly, her hands hanging at her sides, clenched into fists, her knuckles trembling slightly. A frivolous smile appeared on George's face as he spread his hands. You should be thanking me to become the mistress of a duke's son, even though he's the second son and can't inherit the title. Isn't that good enough? Delia turned her head sharply, her eyes filled with cold intent. What's with that look? George let out a chuckle. Don't tell me you actually expect to become the lady of that house. Wake up, Delia Ambrose. Someone like him could never see you as a romantic interest or a fiancé. He's just playing with you. The Duke's family is truly extraordinary. Just because you opened your legs once, he sent so many flowers, didn't he? So you should also. Delia lowered her head, shadows obscuring her eyes. Beg me to kill you. George suddenly froze. The smile on his face vanished instantly. Delia turned her head slightly, a poignant smile on her lips. When that moment comes, I will beg them not to kill you first. Delia closed her eyes, letting her long hair fall over her shoulders, her expression calm and determined. George stood frozen on the spot, his face turning pale as he watched Delia's departing back in terror, listening to the sound of her footsteps echoing in the hallway. Delia pushed open the door and walked alone into the dim bedroom. Delia collapsed onto the bed, her long hair spreading across the sheets, her eyes staring blankly at the ceiling, her body curled up in silence. Delia clenched her fists tightly, her nails sinking deep into her palms. That kind of thing I already knew. I'm just being played with, just like playing with those cheap sweets. It's fine. Anyway, to me, they were never anything special. Delia raised her hand, looking into the void with empty eyes. She reached out and took a chocolate from the box, her fingertips forcefully pinching the rounded edge. Delia suddenly swung her arm, throwing the exquisite sweet hard onto the floor. In the darkness, the chocolate tumbled as it fell. So that's why no one can hurt me anymore. Delia lowered her head, tears in her eyes and a flush on her face. No one can make me submit anymore. Delia stared at her toes. Because being weak is why you get hurt. Naivety is proof of stupidity. Delia took a deep breath, forcibly suppressing her trembling breath. Delia, is now the time to be thinking about this? I must study. Delia walked to the desk, her fingertips brushing over the heavy books. I must pass the exam. I must. Tableware collided with a crisp sound. A lavish banquet was laid out on a long table, with sparkling liquid swaying in wine glasses. Alex stood in the center of the banquet hall, eyes lowered, adjusting his cuffs. Are you only arriving now? Alex. Gilbert Davenport sat at the dining table, toying with his food, a playful smile on his face. Late even for a family gathering. You're really too much. Gilbert turned his head to look at the elder at the end of the long table. Don't you think so? Alex stood alone under the brilliant lights with his back to the camera, facing his silent family on both sides of the long table. His father sat in the main seat, his voice majestic and cold. What are you doing? Apologize quickly. Alex lowered his gaze, his golden eyelashes obscuring the emotions in his eyes. His mother held a wine glass, her expression elegant yet distant. His father sat to the side, coldly watching his eldest son. Alex bowed slightly, his voice low and steady. I'm late. I'm very sorry. Father, mother. Exquisite dishes were placed on the dining table. Gilbert crossed his hands, watching Alex opposite him. I've never been as grateful for the Davenport tradition as I am now, that the whole family must have dinner together every Sunday. Without this excuse, I'm afraid I wouldn't see my brother's face at all. Gilbert turned his head slightly, his eyes filled with scrutiny. Speaking of which, the servants have been gossiping lately. I heard you've been valuing a certain young lady quite a bit these days. He stopped swirling his wine glass and lowered his eyes, staring at the shifting liquid in the glass. You've even been sending her flowers constantly. Alex sat at the end of the long table, silently cutting the meat on his plate. Facing the inquiry, he gave only a brief response. Gilbert continued to press. Did you really replace all the maids? Just because they spoke rudely to that young lady? The steak knife scraped across the porcelain plate with a faint sound. Alex looked down, focused on cutting his food, his movements mechanical and cold. His father stared at him. Regardless, even the head maid I selected was dismissed by you without a word. Don't you think that's going too much? Alex stopped his movements and slowly raised his head, his expression cold and weary. I made a mistake. Never mind. It's no longer a place where one can rest. His father continued to scold him. Even for play, there must be a limit. The Marquis of Clayton's family is very dissatisfied with this. Alex lowered his gaze, staring at the plate in front of him. It's not even a marriage yet. The engagement was just postponed until after graduation. His mother raised her wine glass and took a sip of red wine. Since you were sent to that useless academy, at least don't bring shame to the family. That's right, be nicer to Mrs. Celia. Gilbert sat at the dining table, turning his head to look at Alex opposite him. Where else could you find such a devoted young goddess? His mother put down her glass. She rejected the heirs of all the prestigious families, all because she likes you, even if you can't inherit the title. Gilbert narrowed his eyes, a playful smile forming at the corner of his mouth. I suppose that's the meaning of true love. Alex suddenly clenched his fist, his knuckles pressing against the tabletop. This is exactly why I didn't want to come back. How many times do I have to repeat it? Anyway, no one wants this warm family drama. Alex kept his head down, his expression hidden in the shadows. They must have already completed their investigation of the Ambrose family by now. Delia stood before a tall bookshelf, closing the heavy book in her hands with a dull thud. She looked up at the top of the shelf and reached out to pull out a red-covered book. The theme of this book is very similar to one I bought before. Delia opened the pages and looked down to read carefully. This one too. A noisy clamor of voices came from the distance. Someone was shouting loudly on the street. He's there, right over there. Delia stopped her movements and turned her head to look out the window. Several figures on the street were chasing and playing. Everyone is looking for you. Rocket? She withdrew her gaze and looked back at the book in her hand. For a moment, I thought it was that troublemaking young master running away from home again. Why on earth am I worrying about him? Delia's expression appeared melancholic and weary. He's caused me so much trouble just today alone. She reached out and pressed her hand against the wooden shelf, her fingertips exerting a bit of force, making a dull sound. Bradley sat on the sofa in the living room, waving toward the door. Oh, Delia, come here. He suddenly put his arm around Delia's shoulder from behind and pushed her toward the guest. This is my daughter. She is very intelligent and excellent. Delia's body stiffened, her eyes widening as she stared ahead. The man sitting opposite blew out a puff of smoke and narrowed his eyes, sizing her up. Is this the girl? The one who is close to the Duke's second son? Delia looked down to avoid everyone's gaze. He clearly wants to attract those investors by claiming I have a close relationship with the young master of Davenport. That bastard sends flowers as punctually as an alarm clock, so the rumors have become more and more believable. Delia walked out of the house and stood in the middle of the street, looking up at the sky. I should stop father from continuing like this. But then again, she strolled through the morning streets, looking at the neat buildings on both sides. Since that day, I haven't. I've been beaten at home once. Delia raised her right hand and gently stroked the cuff of her left hand, her fingertips on the fabric. Marcia? Who would have thought the holidays would be so peaceful? She stopped and turned her head to look behind her. Oh, this is... She stood in front of an ice cream shop, lost in thought. The place I came to with that guy. Delia sat on a bench inside the shop, head down, stirring the dessert in her bowl. Alex sat opposite her, scooping up a big mouthful of ice cream into his mouth. Back then, he was always overly attentive. Delia lowered her gaze, her long eyelashes obscuring the emotions in her eyes. But lately, we haven't even run into each other. She turned around and continued strolling through the streets. And yet, he keeps sending flowers. Delia pushed open the door to her home and saw her father excitedly showing a room full of flowers to a guest. Is this how rich people treat their mistresses? She lowered her head, letting her deep blue hair fall, covering her melancholic face. Even without sleeping together, is there compensation? Why? Because playing like that is fun? Welcome. Delia suddenly raised her head, a hint of shock flashing in her eyes. The shop assistant pushed open the glass door and pointed to the promotional blackboard at the entrance. Just one person? Delia waved her hands in a panic, her body involuntarily backing away. No, I'm just... The shop assistant flashed a bright smile and extended a warm invitation. Come in and sit for a while. We're having a grand opening special right now. Delia froze on the spot, repeating the other person's words. Grand opening special? She turned her head to look at the wooden sign standing by the door, which had an exquisite ice cream illustration and words about a grand opening gift event. But he clearly said he used to come here often with his ex-girlfriend. Delia's eyes snapped open, her pupils trembling slightly. Alex sat at the dining table, scooping a spoonful of dessert into his mouth. He even said he always wanted to eat here. That he was just treating me like a mistress. Would I feel less confused? I don't know. I don't want to know what you think of me. I just want to treat you as a weirdo. But why do you always?